Chapter 34-28. Why did time suddenly flow backward? Ning Shu looked at his hand. When did he become so good at comprehending the law of time? On the phone, forget it. She didn't even absorb the crystal that the Cheongsam man gave her. She didn't even enter the door of the law of time. How could there be so much energy? So, something must have happened in this world. Usually, when time flowed backward, someone would be reborn. Who was reborn? Ning Shu felt that doing this kind of task was really tiring. There was a commission and a goal to complete. There was no goal. It was like a headless fly flying around randomly. That also meant that Wengu wasn't going to be auctioned yet. Ning Shu felt that he should find Wengu first. When Ji's brother was sick, Wengu had no choice but to auction herself. If she found Wengu first, it would be easy. Ning Shu checked the cases of various hospitals and found the hospital where Wen Ji's brother was. Wen Ji's brother was young, only 15 or 16 years old. Because of his illness, he was very thin and pale. Wengu was feeding her brother and wiping his mouth carefully. Don't be afraid. With sister here, this won't be a problem. Sister, I'm scared. Don't be afraid. With sister here, sister won't let you be wronged. I won't let myself be wronged. When Ji's face showed the vicissitudes of life. Ning Shu stood at the door of the ward and saw that the bracelet on her wrist had turned snow white. It was a little green before and the jade color wasn't very good. But now it was white and shining. Wengu came out of the ward and saw Ning Shu. Her expression changed drastically. Then she pretended not to know him. Since her rebirth, she suddenly met someone related to Chu Tianfeng. She panicked. Ning Shu smiled. You know me from your expression. It's like you saw a ghost. Wengu quickly shook her head. I don't know. Ning Shu looked at the bracelet on her hand and said, your bracelet is not bad. Do you want to sell it? Wengu put her hands behind her back. In her previous life, Chu Yongning was also interested in this bracelet. She also died because of this bracelet. But when Chu Yongning came, Chu Tianfeng was very angry. He tossed and turned for a long time. When he was taking a bath, he directly fell into the bathtub. At that time, the bracelet had absorbed her blood. When she opened her eyes again, she seemed to have returned to the past. Wengu didn't want to have anything to do with Chu Tianfeng at this time. She didn't want to have anything to do with Chu Tianfeng. He had hurt her enough. Wengu said directly, I'm not selling it. This is something my family left me. Sir, is there anything else? Wengu said coldly to Ning Shu. Ning Shu, don't you look like you need money? Sell me this bracelet. Wengu sneered in her heart. In her previous life, she had been hurt by Chu Tianfeng's heartbreak for money, but not in this life. Because her hands already had a lot of things. The bracelet was filled with white and plump things. It was filled with ginseng and other precious things. Any of these items would be enough to pay for her brother's medical bills. And the most important thing was that there was a pool in the bracelet. This pool was filled with an unknown power that could make the herbs inside grow better. She used this water to water the herbs so that they would grow better. This kind of water was also very delicious to drink. It was very refreshing to drink it. Because of this bracelet, Wengu saw hope. Her life could be turned around, and she wouldn't be as helpless as in her previous life. Ning Shu used his mental strength, but it was still reflected by the bracelet. Generally, things like bracelets were mostly a space with a lot of things inside. Ning Shu guessed that Wengu probably wouldn't go to the auction house to sell herself this time. In fact, this was also a good thing. Chu Tianfeng was crazy. It was too hard to love her. I won't sell this thing. Wengu said again. In her previous life, she had pinned all her hopes on Chu Tianfeng. In this life, she didn't want to rely on Chu Tianfeng anymore. Ning Shu looked at Wen Gu, who had turned over a new leaf, and felt confident. He didn't know what would happen between her and Chu Tianfeng this time. There was no result before, and it would be even more fruitless if they did it again. It was obviously a domineering president who loved her, but it turned into a rebirth. Ning Shu wanted to facepalm. This world was probably playing with her. How was this world going to develop? Was it the road to Wenji's rise? She used to be a little white rabbit, but now she was going to become a domineering flower, a domineering queen. Ning Shu walked towards Wen Gu. Wen Gu immediately stepped back and looked at Ning Shu warily. She tightly clutched the bracelet on her wrist. "Don't come over, I'm going to call for help." Ning Shu said, "I really like the bracelet on your wrist. Consider selling it to me." "I'm not selling it," Wen Gu said firmly. Why was he so good to her bracelet? It was like this in her previous life, and it was also like this in this life. Did Chu Yongning see something? Ning Shu could only say regretfully, "Okay, a gentleman doesn't take what others like." The thing had to be in Wen Ji's hands for the plot to develop. So Ning Shu wouldn't snatch it. Moreover, this thing seemed to have recognized its owner. No one else could use it. He didn't know what was in this space. It seemed that he had to pay more attention to Wen Gu. Ning Shu gave Wen Gu a business card. "When you decide to sell the bracelet, consider me first." Wen Gu took the business card and put it in her pocket. She would never sell it. And he was Chu Tianfeng's uncle. Now when she thought of Chu Tianfeng, her heart was numb. Ning Shu looked into the ward. "What's your brother's illness? Do you have enough money?" Wen Gu said warily, "I have enough money." One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. "Oh," Ning Shu replied and left the hospital. Wen Gu directly threw the business card into the trash can. She felt that her brother was not safe in this hospital. The Chu family was a ticking time bomb. She didn't want to have anything to do with the Chu family in this life. Wen Gu hurriedly transferred her brother to another hospital. Ning Shu just smiled when he heard it. He avoided the Chu family like they were snakes and scorpions. It seemed that he really didn't want to have anything to do with the Chu family. Ning Shu looked at Chu Tianfeng with a smile. Io, his little wife was gone. Chu Tianfeng's face was cold. Seeing Ning Shu smiling at him, her smile was mixed with many meanings, making Chu Tianfeng very unhappy. "What are you smiling at? What are you thinking in your mind?" Chu Tianfeng said coldly. Ning Shu sighed and said, "Sigh, nephew, there are always many mistakes in life. If you miss it, then you miss it." Chu Tianfeng was speechless. Crazy. Ning Shu agreed that Wen Gu shouldn't be with Chu Tianfeng. If it wasn't for money, he wouldn't have tolerated it. Now that he didn't need money and the problem of money was solved, it would be meaningless to be entangled with Chu Tianfeng. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 34-29. Wen Gu had transferred her brother to another hospital. Moreover, the hospital was still very far away from this city. It was in another city. Now that Wen Gu didn't sell herself, the plot couldn't continue. If that bracelet was a powerful space, could it be able to store things? Ning Shu paid attention to Wen Gu. Wen Gu sold a lot of rare medicinal herbs, all of which were tender and looked at least 100 years old. And there was some spiritual energy around them. Ning Shu touched his chin and looked at the medicinal herbs he bought. These medicinal herbs with some spiritual energy looked so good. They probably only grew in the deep mountains and forests. Artificial things didn't look so good. Ning Shu put the ginseng in a box and gave it to Old Master Chu. Ning Shu spent hundreds of thousands on this ginseng. Just this ginseng was so expensive. It seemed that Wen Gu really didn't lack money. A ginseng cost hundreds of thousands. Wengu couldn't possibly only have one ginseng. Not only did she sell her life, but she also sold lingji mushrooms and cordyceps. In short, she sold whatever was expensive. These medicinal herbs contained spiritual energy, which meant that there was a spiritual energy source in the bracelet. He didn't know if this bracelet was a spiritual weapon or natural. Naturally, it wasn't possible. After all, it was polished into a bracelet. How could it become a bracelet naturally? It was probably artificially made. Yes, this bracelet seemed to be a bug. Because this bracelet couldn't be made by ordinary people. Could it be that some people left it in this world by chance? Old Master Chu was very happy to receive Ning Shu's gift. When people were old, they liked things that could let them live longer. Ginseng was really a good thing. Chu Tianfeng saw Ning Shu's flattery and sneered. His sneer immediately attracted Old Master Chu's dissatisfaction. What are you laughing at? I haven't said anything yet. You spent so much money to buy a woman and you still have a reason. Ning Shu snorted and asked, You bought again? Again? Old Master Chu caught the word in Ning Shu's words. You bought 2 women. You. Old Master Chu's eyes were about to pop out. 2. Old Master Chu's expression became a little strange. You also want to play this kind of game like those playboys? Ning Shu was almost amused by Old Master Chu's words. Chu Tianfeng's face turned red and purple at the same time. There aren't 2, just 1. Not even 1, the old man said coldly. Ning Shu was puzzled. Why was Wengu being auctioned again? Hadn't she already left the city? Wengu, who had the bracelet, was already rich enough to pay for her brother's medical expenses. Why would she still auction it? Unless there was something wrong with Wen Ji's brain, it was true love. Ning Shu pondered as he looked at Chu Tianfeng. Wen Ji's plot had already changed, but Chu Tianfeng was still in the plot. He bought another woman. This woman could be another woman, not Wengu, but it could also be Wengu. After all, love made people blind. However, Wengu already had money. Even if she wanted to continue her relationship with Chu Tianfeng, she could appear in front of Chu Tianfeng as an equal instead of a business relationship. Wen Ji's brain must have been filled with acid to appear in front of Chu Tianfeng in such a way. Moreover, Wengu seemed to be a very prideful person. How could she do that? It was most likely that the woman who was bought was no longer Wengu. Ning Shu clicked his tongue and looked at Chu Tianfeng. Was this really true love? Was Chu Tianfeng setting to fall in love with the woman he bought, regardless of whether the woman was Wengu, Li Gu, or XXX Gu? Then Chu Tianfeng was a little sad. After clearing his doubts, Ning Shu came to the place where Chu Tianfeng hid his mistress. It was still the same villa. There was still a canary here. The only difference was that this golden one was different from the previous one. Chu Tianfeng seemed to really like pitiful and pure girls. This girl's style was very similar to Wen Ji's. A pure white lotus that grew out of the mud. A girl who looked clean and pure. This was probably the taste of most men. Ning Shu didn't get close to this girl. After all, this girl had nothing to do with him. Chu Tianfeng was with this woman and was living a happy life. Did that mean he had no chance with Wengu? Or was this girl the second female lead, an obstacle to Chu Tianfeng and Wengu being together? Ning Shu felt that if he were Wengu, he would probably be disgusted to death. In his previous life, he was bought and developed special feelings for Chu Tianfeng. In this life, Chu Tianfeng bought another woman. Wengu knew about the past. Ning Shu felt that Chu Tianfeng had probably been kicked out of the male leads list. He was so immoral. It was okay to have sex with the female lead, but not with other women. But maybe Chu Tianfeng was just venting. After Wengu appeared, Chu Tianfeng knew how to love. Ning Shu shivered. Why did he feel so disgusted? TSK, Ning Shu didn't look at the scene. He knew that Wengu was now in the next city and was living a good life. Her brother could also get the best treatment. She also got the favor of many men. Ning Shu felt more and more that Chu Tianfeng was probably the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th or 8th male lead. Ning Shu had lost all hope in this world. So, what was the evolution of this world? Could it be better? It was originally a good plot of a domineering CEO's wife. Why was it suddenly reborn? Then the female lead woke up and abandoned the scumbag of the past. Ning Shu felt that Chu Tianfeng was probably a scumbag now. If Wengu knew that Chu Tianfeng had sold another woman, she would probably feel sick of it. She would think that he bought her because he had special feelings for her. The result would be the same no matter who it was. Ning Shu didn't care about Chu Tianfeng anymore. Instead, he used work as an excuse to transfer to the branch in the city where Wengu was. Since Chu Tianfeng didn't care, she focused on observing the target. Anyway, when she was with Chu Tianfeng, he always looked at her as if she was a bad person and he had seen through her. Although Ning Shu said that she wouldn't argue with him, she didn't feel good staying with him. She might as well leave. Old Master Chu didn't look well. He seemed to be sick. When he heard Ning Shu say that she was leaving, he said weakly, "Why are you leaving so soon? Stay at home." Chu Tianfeng hoped that this bastard would leave as far as possible. But his grandfather looked very weak now, so he didn't talk back. Ning Shu asked, "Dad, what's wrong with your body? You don't look well." Old Master Chu waved his hand. "It's just a common cold. It's nothing serious." Chapter 34:30. The family doctor has already seen me and prescribed some medicine. It won't take long for me to recover. No, it will take a long time for me to recover. My parents aren't traveling far. I'm sick and you're leaving home. Old Master Chu pretended to be pitiful. Chu Tianfeng glanced at Ning Shu and said to Old Master Chu, "Dad, Uncle is going to work. It's not like he won't come back. You can call him. He'll be back soon." Ning Shu discreetly took Old Master Chu's pulse. His symptoms were indeed that of a cold. However, Old Master Chu was old. A cold was not a small challenge for him. Ning Shu said, "Then I'll wait until you're better." He didn't lack time. "That's right. You're still young. You have a lot of days ahead of you. I'm old. I don't know when I'll pass away. So you should spend more time with me." Chu Tian said unhappily, "Grandpa, why are you saying this? You're in good health." Old Master Chu only had a common cold. However, it didn't get better at all. Instead, it got worse. Medicine didn't work. His body temperature fluctuated and he had a fever. At this time, the family doctor was useless. They could only send him to the hospital. The uncle and nephew sent Old Master Chu to the hospital together. However, they found that the hospital was full of people. Coughing sounds came one after another. It seemed that they all had a cold. Flu. Of course, Old Master Chu didn't have to wait in line. He went directly to the specialist and asked, "I've had a cold for half a month. Why don't I get better?" The specialist also said with a worried face, "There's been a large-scale outbreak of influenza recently. Ordinary medicine doesn't work at all. The symptoms of this disease start with a cold. It will get worse and worse. Finally, it will develop into a weakening of the internal organs. There's no way to stop the weakening of the body." Chu Tianfeng suddenly slammed the table. "What did you say? There's no way to treat it?" Chu Tianfeng asked. He only had one relative left now. His grandfather had always been full of vigor and vigor. Chu Tianfeng felt that his grandfather would accompany him for a long time. There's no solution for now. Weak old people and children are more likely to be infected. Old Master Chu is old and infected. Sigh, it was more or less a death sentence. Old Master Chu, on the other hand, was quite open-minded. Fortunately, I've lived for 70 to 80 years. Even if something happens to me, I'll still die of old age. It's not a loss at all. Ning Shu saw that Old Master Chu's hands were trembling slightly on his thighs. How could there be no fluctuations in his heart? My grandfather must be cured. Otherwise, this hospital can forget about continuing to operate, Chu Tianfeng said fiercely. It was similar to the ancient emperors telling them that if they couldn't cure him, they would be buried with him. Old Master Chu said to his grandson, "Don't worry, the doctor will find a way." With so many patients, any doctor would be anxious. Ning Shu asked, "Did the disease mutate? Is that why it's so contagious? Was there a plague?" It was not easy for plagues to occur in modern society. After all, the medical conditions were much better and there were many medicines available. Even if it was an infectious disease, it would probably be resolved after a period of time. Old Master Chu was hospitalized. In the hospital, there were doctors and nurses taking care of Old Master Chu's condition at all times. If anything went wrong, they would be able to treat him in time. Because the elder was sick, Chu Tianfeng was not in the mood to look for canary. Instead, he stayed by Old Master Chu's side and worked remotely. Ning Shu also had nothing to do in the hospital. He found that the doctors and nurses were very busy every day, and more people were being sent to the hospital. The symptoms were the same. At first, it was a cold, then a recurring fever. There was no medicine to cure it. All the anti-inflammatory drugs and drips were useless. Then it was breathing difficulties, pain all over the body, and organ failure. Moreover, the cause of the disease could not be found, nor did they know what virus it was. This disease was aggressive. The media reported it every day. The country was also anxious and invested all kinds of funds to research and treat it. The doctors and nurses came into contact with these patients every day. Gradually, some of them were infected. This disease caused great panic and spread at an extremely fast speed. Ning Shu gave Old Master Chu acupuncture when he had nothing to do, but it was really useless. This was a little strange. Moreover, this disease could not be cured at all. More and more people died, causing great panic. It directly affected the stability and development of the whole society. Many companies and enterprises were on vacation, causing great economic losses. Although they were already researching medicine, how could they keep up with the speed of death? In this case, crimes were frequent, social order was completely out of control, and all walks of life were stagnant. Ning Shu, damn, what happened? Why was he like a wild dog? He was completely crazy. The Chu family was rich and could get the best treatment. If this continued, he would die sooner or later. Chu Tianfeng's face was very cold. He knew that the disease could not be cured. He was very unhappy and in pain. If he had nothing to do, he could only stay by Old Master Chu's side and accompany him for a while. Old Master Chu also understood that his body was dying. He said to Chu Tianfeng, "Tianfeng, don't always spend money. It's easy to start a business but hard to keep it. Don't always find trouble with your uncle. He's not the child of a mistress, nor is he my child. He's not a Chu family member. Everything in the Chu family will be handed over to you. Chu Yongning, can't you let him work for the company?" When Chu Tianfeng heard this, he said, "Grandpa, don't worry. I won't find trouble with him for no reason. But if he wants to plot against the Chu family, I won't let him off. You're right to do this. It's always right to be careful. In the future, when you want to manage the company, you have to be tolerant." Of course, Ning Shu knew what this grandfather and grandson were talking about. He did not care at all. All his thoughts were on this disease. This was the first time Ning Shu had seen such a powerful disease. The speed of infection was very fast, and the speed of illness was also very fast. In 2 months, people died. The speed of death was gradually increasing. If this continued, there would not be enough deaths. What kind of disease was so powerful? The evolution of this world really made Ning Shu very confused. But this disease should be related to evolution. In order to prevent the disease from spreading again, the people who died of the disease had to be cremated. There were many corpses being cremated every day. And many of them were children. Children and the elderly were the most important group of people to be infected. With children dying on such a large scale, the population would be greatly reduced. Now, the country was probably going crazy. They were racing against time to research medicine to deal with this disease. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-31. The birth of a new disease would consume a lot of manpower and resources, but the current situation was very dangerous. Many people were dying every second. Read the latest. Read the latest chapters for free. By the time the medicine was developed, there wouldn't be many people left. The first to die would be the elderly and children, followed by the strong adults. Was the world going to be destroyed? But the heavens would always give them a chance to live. It was impossible to kill them all. Unless the heavens collapsed. Then where was the chance to live? After Wen Gu was reborn, something like this happened. Ning Shu thought of Wen Ji's bracelet. Perhaps the chance to live was in Wen Ji's bracelet. Because of the social turmoil, many factories had closed down. Without basic production, it meant that there was a shortage of supplies. Thus, all kinds of panic buying began. Everyone worked together and almost all the goods on the market were going to be sold out. They were crazily hoarding supplies. Wen Gu was no exception. Moreover, her bracelet had a large space that could store a supermarket's items. Because of the raging disease, Wen Gu didn't let her brother stay in the hospital. Now there were many patients with infectious diseases in the hospital. Her brother's body was weak and easy to get infected. Moreover, she often gave her brother some of the spiritual spring in the space, so his body gradually got better. She believed that he would recover soon. Wen Gu was very confident in the spiritual spring in the bracelet. Because of the infectious disease, the whole city was in a very decadent state. There were basically no people on the streets. No one cleaned the streets, and the leaves and sand were everywhere. From afar, it looked like a ghost town. Everyone stayed at home. They didn't go out unless it was necessary. Even if they went out, they would wear all kinds of equipment and would wear a spacesuit. Society came to a standstill. Wen Gu thought that it was fortunate that she had the bracelet. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to live. She didn't know if Chu Tianfeng was infected. Bah, what was she thinking about him for? Chu Tianfeng's life or death had nothing to do with her. Chu Tianfeng's health had always been good, and he was so rich that he paid attention to hygiene. The chances of him contracting this disease were very high. Moreover, it was usually the elderly and children who were infected. Right, didn't Chu Tianfeng have a grandfather? Wen Gu patted her head. She told herself not to get involved with Chu Tianfeng. The Chu family had nothing to do with her. Chu Tianfeng never liked her. In this life, she was just a commodity. The drug hadn't been developed yet, but the situation was getting worse. Although the government had repeatedly said that the dead must be cremated, it was only safe when they were cremated, and any viruses in the body could be incinerated. However, there were some corpses that couldn't be burned in time and would quickly rot. Sometimes, when a family member fell ill, they would be so scared that they would throw the body into the sea or bury it quickly. Soon, the virus spread among the animals. Animal carcasses were everywhere, increasing the infection rate. The government had to spend a lot of effort to get people to deal with the carcasses of these animals. Meat became inedible because no one knew if the poultry, pork, and beef had been infected or contaminated. In short, it was a mess. It would take a long time to cure this disease, but time waits for no one. Anyone who contracted this disease would be doomed without exception. Old Master Chu held on for a while, but he couldn't take it anymore and passed away. Chu Tianfeng couldn't take it anymore and almost destroyed the hospital. However, medical resources were especially tight at the moment. If it were any other time, Chu Tianfeng could bankrupt this hospital in a matter of minutes. That definitely wouldn't do. It would incur the wrath of the crowd. Everyone was being tortured by the disease, but he actually wanted to destroy the hospital. People in his family died, but other people's families didn't. Of course, Chu Tianfeng was also angry, but he really couldn't destroy the hospital. Old Master Chu's body was cremated. Probably because Old Master Chu told Chu Tianfeng about her, Chu Tianfeng didn't target Ning Shu anymore. Moreover, they were relatives in name, Chu Tianfeng's only family. Chu Tianfeng's attitude towards Ning Shu improved a little. Ning Shu asked, "What are your plans next?" "I'll follow what Dad said when he was still alive. I'll go to S City now." "Why are you going there?" "The branch there is closed." "It's useless even if you go there," Chu Tianfeng said with a frown. Money was really worthless now. What was valuable was resources. Because there was no production, there would be fewer and fewer resources in the market. Things that money couldn't buy were worthless. Of course, Ning Shu was going to find Wengu. She always felt that according to the current medical situation, there was a way to solve the current problem. Then it could only be metaphysics. Wen Ji's body had something beyond the knowledge of this world. Perhaps this thing might be a chance of survival. Ning Shu felt like she had been hit by a cactus. She also tried to gather the surrounding Reiki to treat the disease. She thought that since the bracelet had Reiki and could treat diseases, she could also gather Reiki, although there was pitifully little Reiki in this world. She tried it, but it didn't help Old Master Chu's disease at all. She felt that it was really biased. It was all Reiki, but why was her Reiki useless? So now she needed to find Wengu to verify something. Could it be that the evolution of this plane was to kill all living creatures and then start anew? That was unlikely, right? Even if they wanted to shuffle the cards, they had to have the cards. If they didn't even have the cards, how could they shuffle the cards? Ning Shu said, "I'm going to S City to look for someone." "Don't worry." "Who's worried about you? S City is a bit far from here. If you die on the way, you'll be fine. Don't spread the disease back." The environment outside was very bad. There was a stench in the air, the smell of rotting animal corpses. Because there were fewer trees, yellow sand was flying at this time. When they went out, their mouths were full of sand. It was no different from a ghost town. Now in the face of disaster, Chu Tianfeng also abandoned the little bit of unhappiness and awkwardness. He said to Ning Shu stiffly, "The safest thing now is to stay at home." There were no disinfectant products on the market. They were afraid that they would be infected if they didn't disinfect carefully. The air outside was no longer breathable. In the face of disaster, all living creatures were extremely fragile. It was not easy to build a harmonious and stable society. It was the efforts of all sides. But to destroy a harmonious and stable society, it could be done in minutes. Ning Shu felt awkward when she heard Chu Tianfeng's concern for her. Although Chu Tianfeng was as calm as a dog now, in fact, he was panicking. Now even the annoying Ning Shu felt that he could rely on him. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 34-32. Now, Chu Tianfeng was the only one left in the Chu family. All the responsibilities were on his shoulders. When Old Master Chu was still alive, he could still suppress those old foxes. Now that old Master Chu was gone, Chu Tianfeng could only rely on himself. Yali Mountain was huge. Now Ning Shu was going to run away again. Although Chu Tianfeng didn't like him, he needed to be with him. And it wasn't safe outside at all. All kinds of crimes happened frequently. Without rules and sanctions, everything was a mess. The rules had collapsed. This was what the ancients called the collapse of etiquette and music. If he went out, he might be killed. Chu Tianfeng felt that no matter how much he didn't like Chu Yongning, he couldn't just watch him die. Ning Shu said, "I'll be careful. This disease probably won't be cured for a long time. You should prepare more supplies and fight a protracted war." Supplies and water would become very precious, especially clean water, which was extremely precious. But now the industrial pollution was quite serious. It was really difficult to have clean water. Then they would have to use equipment to filter and remove the dirt. But now the various power and water systems in the city were still maintained, but no one was taking care of them. In the end, sooner or later even the water and water supply would not be enough. At that time, the government would have to intervene and gradually restore the social order. But as long as the epidemic was not solved, the panic would not disappear. Living in fear every day, they had no intention to produce and contribute to society. Now they were thinking about how to survive. As long as they could get supplies and water, it was fine. They didn't even need to pay. Ning Shu couldn't accompany Chu Tianfeng. And two men, no, a man and a woman alone, was not good. Ning Shu said to Chu Tianfeng, "I have something to do, so you take care of yourself. Prepare more supplies. Money is not very useful now, but you still have to find a safe place to store it. When this is over, the Chu family can still make a comeback." Jewelry, gold, antiques, and so on were also wealth. When this incident was over, the Chu family also had capital. "Do I need you to tell me?" "I know." Chu Tianfeng had told him before he died. He was already looking for a suitable place. Paper money was worthless now. Only gold and jewelry were hard currency. Fortunately, the Chu clan had a lot of gold in storage. Ning Shu shrugged and said, "I'm just saying. I'm leaving." Ning Shu picked up the car keys. Because they were going on a long trip, Ning Shu drove an off-road jeep. He brought along enough tools to prevent the car from breaking down on the way. In a world without spiritual energy, it was useless to use the attracting curse technique. At the same time, he put a few barrels of oil in the trunk so that he could find a place to repair the car. Chu Tianfeng's face was cold as he carried 2 boxes of water and some toiletries. He threw them into Ning Shu's car and said, "Bring some food so that you don't starve to death on the way. If you go out, don't come back. Especially if you're infected with the virus, don't come back." Ning Shu was a little speechless. Is it that hard to say that you're looking forward to my return? With Chu Tianfeng's personality, it was very easy for him to fall in love with her. Those who knew would be fine, but those who didn't would be hurt by your poisonous tongue. The most important thing is that he doesn't realize it himself. He thinks I'm really good to you. But when others heard it, they felt cold and piercing pain. Ning Shu got into the car, rolled down the window, and said to Chu Tianfeng, "Don't die. Take care of yourself." Chu Tianfeng sneered. "I won't die even if you die." Ning Shu tilted his head and stared at Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng was confused by Ning Shu's stare. "What?" Ning Shu said, "Clean up the house and come with me." Chu Tianfeng said without thinking, "Get lost." The Chu family still needed to rely on him. Besides, going out now was like having one's head tied to his belt. If he went out, he would either be robbed or infected with the virus. This virus spread rapidly in humans and animals. Even if the plants weren't contaminated now, it might not be long before the plants were contaminated. After all, there were many corpses buried in the soil. Even if the government spent a lot of effort, there were still some animal corpses that they didn't have time to deal with. Soaking in the sewers meant rotting in the soil. Plants absorbed the nutrients in the soil. Perhaps even the plants would be contaminated. So the living environment now was extremely difficult. Even more difficult. To make matters worse, there hadn't been any rain since the outbreak of the flu. The drought had lasted until now. During this period, there was artificial rain, but it was a little drizzle that was quickly evaporated by the hot weather. It was useless. There wasn't much clean water to begin with, and now there was a drought. Water was the source of life. There was no way to survive now. So when Ning Shu invited Chu Tianfeng to go with him, Chu Tianfeng refused without thinking. Going out at this time was an act of suicide. It was fine if he wanted to die, but he wanted to drag him down with him. What a wild ambition. Ning Shu wanted to find Wengu. He thought that Chu Tianfeng was the male lead and it would be easier to get close to Wengu. Now that the world was in shambles, Ning Shu's mood was the same as Xiao Tianxuan's. Please don't collapse. If the world collapsed, Ning Shu didn't know what kind of punishment he would receive. More importantly, it would affect the world next to him. He failed his first mission. He would lose all his face. Ning Shu looked Chu Tianfeng up and down. Do I know why you're running around? Chu Tianfeng, you want to die. Ning Shu said, I want to find a place to live. I can't live in a big city. Let's go somewhere else. You can come with me. Chu Tianfeng said, I want to take care of the Chu family. Forget it. Just dig a hole and bury the gold and jewelry. As for the company, who's working now? No one. In this situation, only the medical team was working. Only by conquering this virus could humans and the whole world survive. Although the government would provide relief and provide some clean water and food after a period of time, the situation was getting worse. The Chu clan no longer exists. What are you guarding it for? If I leave, you'll be all alone. There won't be anyone to take care of you. You might as well follow me. I won't let you get infected. Do you want to come with me? Chu Tianfeng was a little hesitant, but he was still very wary of Ning Shu. He felt that Chu Yongning wanted to harm him. Ning Shu. Money is useless now. Why would I harm you? It wasn't like there hadn't been an incident in history where 1 ingot of gold could buy a bun. Money was useless to Ning Shu. Chapter 34-33. A stack of money wasn't even as valuable as a bottle of clean water. Chu Tianfeng sneered and didn't reject him immediately. He looked hesitant, but he seemed to be very tempted. Okay, let's go together after I'm done. Chu Tianfeng had nothing to worry about now. Grandpa was gone, and the Chu family was just like that. Damn, the last family member he had was the annoying Chu Yongning. Ning Shu nodded. Sure, let's go together and find a way to save the world. Chu Tianfeng sneered. Save the world? Chu Tianfeng found a place to bury some of the jewelry in the house. He did it behind Ning Shu's back. He was still very wary of Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't care. It seemed that the Chu family had a secret place. There was a lot of gold and all kinds of jewelry there. Leaving these things was probably a backup plan. In case something happened, they could rely on these things to make a comeback. Chu Tianfeng placed all these things in the place. After that, he said to Ning Shu, we can go now. To travel. Ning Shu let Chu Tianfeng drive while he sat comfortably in the front passenger seat. When Chu Tianfeng was tired, he would take over. Chu Tianfeng asked, where are we going? Chu Tianfeng drove very carefully to prevent people from suddenly appearing and robbing them. They had a lot of water and convenience food in the car. There were also pots and pans, probably because Chu Tianfeng wanted to eat something hot on the way. Ning Shu said, if you want to eat, cook yourself. Chu Tianfeng was a second-generation rich kid who had everything laid out for him. How could he know how to cook? It was impossible for Ning Shu to cook. She didn't need to eat. Even if she was a spirit, she wouldn't feel hungry. She was so energy-saving and frugal. Why are we still going to S-City? Chu Yongning said before that he wanted to go to S-City. Why was he so persistent? Ning Shu said, actually, I'm going to find someone. Chu Tianfeng rolled his eyes unhappily. Aren't you going to save the world? Yeah, it won't stop me from saving the world. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. By the way, didn't you buy a woman? How did you deal with her? Chu Tianfeng's face grew long, like a donkey's face. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked, what's wrong? He ran away, Chu Tianfeng said. Ning Shu snorted. Can I interpret it as her abandoning you? In the end, it wasn't Wengu. If it was Wengu, she wouldn't have run away like that. That's not right. It's obviously better for her to follow you. Is there something wrong with this girl's brain? The Chu family's resources were very good. Chu Tianfeng interrupted Ning Shu impatiently. Can we not talk about this anymore? Ning Shu, why can't I tell you? Also, don't be sad. It's a deal, there's nothing to be sad about. Chu Tianfeng wanted service, and that girl wanted money. There was nothing to be sad about. However, if Chu Tianfeng thought that others would be loyal to him, then he was thinking too much. Moreover, everyone was busy trying to save their own lives. Under such circumstances, feelings were very fragile. A life was not even comparable to a meal. Can you shut up? Chu Tianfeng roared. He stepped on the accelerator and sped up, raising a lot of dust. Ning Shu, slow down. If there's a problem with the car, you can fix it. Chu Tianfeng didn't know how to fix the car. He could only slow down. Ning Shu shook his head and said, in such an environment, it's not easy for a young master like you, who can't differentiate between grain and limb, to survive. Usually, there were servants to do the laundry, cooking, and cleaning. But at this time, there were no servants to serve Chu Tianfeng. Can you stop talking? You're a man, why are you talking so much? You don't have to worry about whether I can survive or not. I won't die even if you die. Chu Yongning was so annoying. No one would think that he was mute if he didn't talk. Ning Shu, you're a man. Why are you like a woman and not listening? As your uncle, I'm your only family in this world. I have to teach you how to survive in this world. In this world, we don't have to sign documents. We can just have meetings. Ning Shu acted like an elder. Chu Tianfeng blocked Ning Shu. Ning Shu was bored, so he yawned and closed his eyes to sleep. Just as he was sleeping comfortably, he was violently shaken awake. Ning Shu opened his eyes and asked, "What are you doing?" "Look outside." Ning Shu looked out the window and saw a group of people holding watermelon knives around the car. They were glaring at them. "Ning Shu, can't we just run them over?" "Would these people be able to run them over?" "There's a needle in front." "What can I do?" "What was the point of driving over and having the tires pierced?" "4 of the tires are broken now," Chu Tianfeng said. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked Chu Tianfeng, "Can you fight?" "Yes, I know the way of the sword," Chu Tianfeng said. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. How could they fight when they were poking each other with a sword? Moreover, they were covered in thick layers. Ning Shu looked at the shiny knives in their hands. If he asked Chu Tianfeng to fight, he would probably get beaten up. Absolutely, absolutely. Ning Shu pushed open the car door, looked at the crowd and asked, in broad daylight, "The world is clear, shut up. Take out everything in the car." Everything. These people were not in the mood to listen to Ning Shu's nonsense. Ning Shu sighed. Why were people so irritable nowadays? Why didn't they listen to what he had to say? Ning Shu, I won't. Don't come out, Ning Shu said to Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng was a little worried. Can you do it? There were 6 of them, and each of them had a weapon in their hands. Could this fake uncle of his do it? Ning Shu winked at Chu Tianfeng. Believe in your uncle. He can do it. Ning Shu used his martial arts and mental strength to knock them down one by one. Soon, they were lying on the ground, unable to get up. Ning Shu put away the fruit knives. They were weapons, after all. Chu Tianfeng was a little stunned. How could this uncle be so strong? He could fight a few of them alone. These robbers were lying on the ground moaning. Ning Shu kicked them. Do you have any tires? If you do, take them out quickly. Also, clean up these nails. Otherwise, do it again. The posture was wrong. Do it again. Actually, the car had a spare tire, but all 4 wheels were broken. They did not have that many tires. These people had broken their tires, so they had to deal with it properly. Yo, no one is moving. Ning Shu clenched her fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. She looked coldly at these people and stepped on the leg of the person closest to her. It was so painful that he immediately howled in pain. The others heard the painful cry and couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 34-34. Even Chu Tianfeng didn't expect his uncle to be so ruthless. Even when he heard the screams, he felt the pain. On the phone. Then he felt the pain coming from the car window. Yes, yes. The others were frightened by Ning Shu. They went to the nearby auto repair shop to get the tires and changed them. Then they waved at the car that was driving away. They sent the killing god away. Chu Tianfeng glanced at Ning Shu as if nothing had happened. Ning Shu asked, "Nephew, what are you doing? Why are you looking at me?" Chu Tianfeng asked, "Where did you learn Kung Fu?" Usually, Chu Yongning looked careless as if he didn't care about anything. People couldn't tell whether he was telling the truth or not. This time, he was surprisingly good at beating people up. Why was he so skilled? Did he fight often? He didn't see him beat people up at home. This Chu Yongning really hit it well. If it wasn't for today, he wouldn't have known that Chu Yongning was so violent. It's overseas. It's actually very chaotic overseas. It's impossible to survive without some strength. I'm good at many things. Chu Tianfeng merely chuckled, feeling a lot more at ease. After all, at a time like this, an extra bit of strength meant an extra bit of hope for survival. At this time, strength was something people believed in, and money was useless. Society continued to be chaotic. There was no money, and the primitive law of the jungle had been dealt with. The strong could survive, and the weak could only be eliminated. Chu Tianfeng couldn't help but ask, "Why do you have to go to S City?" "I told you, I'm going to find someone," Ning Shu said unhappily. "I've said it a few times. Can you remember it with your brain?" Chu Tianfeng was cold. He was very unhappy to be scolded like this. "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep for a while. You drive." Chu Tianfeng gave the steering wheel to Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't say anything and started to drive. In order to avoid being noticed by Chu Tianfeng, Ning Shu would pretend to be very tired and occasionally eat and drink some water. It would be suspicious if he didn't eat, drink, or rest. "Chu Yongning, why are you eating so little?" He couldn't even finish a bag of biscuits. Drinking 2 mouthfuls of water could last him half a day. "Ning Shu, you might not know this, but I cut my stomach to lose weight. My stomach is so small." Chu Tianfeng thought he was always full of tricks. Chu Tianfeng didn't know if he should trust him. He felt like he was about to be played to death. Chu Tianfeng had always been a very particular person, so not being able to clean himself during the journey made him very irritable. But after a long time, it would still be the same. Chu Tianfeng was disgusted by the sour smell of his own sweat. Ning Shu felt that Chu Tianfeng might have liked the smell of kissing. It was obviously unpleasant, but he insisted on smelling it. What was wrong with him? What do you mean? Why don't you smell? Chu Tianfeng approached Ning Shu and sniffed hard, but he didn't smell anything. Instead, he smelled a faintly discernible fragrance, but the fragrance was mixed with the smell of the sea. In short, the taste was quite complicated, but it was good that his whole body was sour. Ning Shu, I was born not to sweat. He was that awesome. Chu Tianfeng felt that this person, whatever words he wanted to say. Just like that, Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng took turns driving. After a few days of travel, they finally arrived at S City. Of course, the road wasn't very peaceful. Places like the gas stations were all occupied. As long as someone came to refuel, they would immediately rob the passers-by. Some people were more brutal. Not only did they rob, they would also kill. If there were women around, they would even violate them. First rape then kill. When faced with such brutal criminals, Ning Shu would directly cripple him. Now that the country was in chaos, there was no way to maintain law and order. All kinds of forces were also stirring. At the moment, the regime was divided. Ordinary laws could no longer deter criminals. Even with strict laws, there were still people who took the risk to commit crimes. Now that there were no laws to restrict them, they could do whatever they wanted without having to bear legal responsibility. This was simply a paradise for criminals. Chu Tianfeng saw that Ning Shu was either chopping his hands and feet or chopping his cock. His face was expressionless and he felt a chill in his heart. Now that he thought about it, Chu Yoming used to be so tolerant of him. He provoked him so much, but he ignored him. How painful would it be to have his cock chopped off? Chu Tianfeng felt a cold wind below his crotch. When they arrived at S City, Ning Shu released a strong spiritual power to scan for possible places where Wengu might be. He was afraid that Wengu had already left S City. Ning Shu drove around in a big circle just to find Wengu. Chu Tianfeng had a headache from Ning Shu and couldn't help but say, "What do you want to do? Can't you take a detour? I feel uncomfortable." Ning Shu turned to look at him and snorted. Chu Tianfeng immediately shut up and didn't have any objections. It was probably because of Chu Tianfeng's presence. After all, he was related to Wengu. Chu Tianfeng and Wengu were bound to meet sooner or later. Regardless of whether it was to sever all ties or to renew their relationship, the two of them would still have to meet. Wengu was still in S City. Ning Shu found the community where Wengu lived through his spiritual power. There weren't many people in this community. Some of the houses were already empty. The disease epidemic in this city was also very serious. The air was dirty. The house next to Wen Ji's was empty. Ning Shu took Chu Tianfeng to the house next to Wen Ji's and planned to stay in this empty house. Chu Tianfeng looked at the security door and asked, "Do you have the key? Did you buy a house here?" "No, there's no one here. We'll stay here for the time being." Chu Tianfeng, it was better to live in a villa than a place like this. Why did they come all the way here? And how could they get in without the key? Ning Shu directly stretched out his foot and kicked the door. With a bang, the door fell to the ground. The wall shook. Chu Tianfeng covered his face. Was this a fucking human? Chu Tianfeng felt that it wasn't easy for him to live until now. He provoked Chu Yoming all the time. He was so lucky that Chu Yoming didn't kick him to death. The commotion here was so loud that the siblings next door were startled by the commotion. Wen Gu opened the door and saw Chu Tianfeng and Ning Shu. She rubbed her eyes and saw the door on the ground. Was she blind? Why did she see this uncle and nephew pair here? Chu Tianfeng saw Wen Gu standing at the door. Her snow-white skin was so white that it was transparent. She was clean and full of spiritual energy. At this moment, her clear eyes were looking at them, full of surprise. Chu Tianfeng didn't know why, but when he saw this girl, his heart began to pound. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-35. Chu Tianfeng had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. It was very strange and uncontrollable. Take a look. It was a complicated feeling. It was very complicated. Impulses made him want to hug the woman in front of him. There was also a feeling that belonged to him and that he was very familiar with her. Ning Shu was the first to speak. He said in surprise, "Hey, why are you here?" Chu Tianfeng was immediately unhappy. "You know each other? Nephew? Don't act jealous." Ning Shu stared at him. After seeing Ning Shu's violence, Chu Tianfeng immediately shut up. Wen Ji's emotions were very turbulent. She really didn't want to mess with Chu Tianfeng first. How did Chu Tianfeng, who was originally far away, suddenly appear in front of her? When she saw Chu Tianfeng, Wen Ji's heart was in a mess. Without saying a word, she slammed the door shut. She leaned against the door and touched her chest. Deep breaths, deep breaths. In this life, Chu Tianfeng was no longer her creditor. They had nothing to do with each other. There was no need to be afraid. Chu Tianfeng saw that the girl slammed the door without saying a word and felt that her temper was really bad. There was a sour and numb feeling in his heart. Ning Shu looked at Chu Tianfeng's pig face and put up the door to block it. He had to move the door every time he went out. He didn't even have to repair it. After all, there was nothing valuable in the house. Chu Tianfeng asked Ning Shu, "Can you tell me your purpose now? This house is really small. Are we really going to live in a house like this?" Chu Tianfeng looked at the house. Oh my God, this house wasn't even as big as his bathroom. How could people live in a place like this? The girl next door lived in a house like this. It was too small for her. She deserved better things. Better, the best thing. Ning Shu said, "You're already out. Don't be so pretentious, okay? The bloodthirsty factor in my body has completely exploded. I'm afraid that I won't be able to control myself and will beat you up." Chu Tianfeng, see, Grandpa wasn't around anymore. Chu Yongning was bullying her. Chu Tianfeng paused for a moment before asking, "You know the girl next door?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yeah, I quite like her. She's pretty, right? She might be your aunt in the future." Chu Tianfeng almost jumped up. "You old bastard, you're actually thinking about that little girl." Ning Shu laughed coldly. "If I'm an old cabbage, then you're also an old cabbage. I'm at least a few years younger than you." Chu Tianfeng and Ning Shu went tit for tat. Ning Shu curled his lips, his face full of disdain. Could it be that Chu Tianfeng fell in love with the beautiful Wen Gu at first sight? After her rebirth, Wen Gu was even more outstanding than before. Her skin was like a peeled egg, so tender that water could be squeezed out. Looking at her made people want to place her in their hearts. Pervert. Ning Shu walked out of the house and knocked on the door next door. Chu Tianfeng shamelessly followed Ning Shu. Wen Gu saw two handsome faces through the smoke. Although they were a little distorted, they were still pleasing to the eye. However, Wen Gu was frightened. She hadn't thought about how to face Chu Tianfeng. "Sister, what's wrong?" Wen Hua saw his sister's pale face and couldn't help but ask. "Nothing." Wen Hua's body was thin and weak. Even a middle-aged man like him could be infected by the virus. However, Wen Hua had lived until now with a weak body and hadn't been infected. It could be said that he was a miracle. It could be seen how much effort Wen Gu put into her brother. Someone is knocking on the door outside. Should we open the door? Wen Hua knew that the current society was different. He couldn't open the door casually. There was once when someone knocked on the door. He opened the door, but in the end, someone entered the room and took away all the food and drinks in the house. From then on, Wen Hua didn't need his sister's instructions. As long as someone knocked on the door, he would definitely not open the door. It wasn't easy for his sister to find supplies. He couldn't share his sister's burden and even let someone snatch the things away. They just moved in next door. Actually, they're all people that sister knows. Wen Hua was a little puzzled. Then why didn't sister open the door? Of course, she couldn't open the door. When she saw Chu Tianfeng's face, she thought of her previous life. After all, Chu Tianfeng was someone she loved. When she suddenly saw him, it was inevitable that she would panic. Wen Gu repeatedly hypnotized herself in her heart. She was no longer the same person as before. She didn't need to please Chu Tianfeng. Moreover, the current Chu Tianfeng didn't know her at all. Wen Gu opened the door and said coldly, "What are you doing?" "Ning Shu, haven't we met before?" Wen Gu pretended to be enlightened. "Oh, it's you, Chu Yongning. You gave me your name card back then. By the way, why are you here?" Wen Gu was really good. This place was very far from the city where the Chu family was located. Ning Shu introduced Chu Tianfeng. "This is my nephew, Chu Tianfeng. The Chu family is bankrupt, so we had no choice but to come here." Bankrupt? Wen Gu couldn't help but look at Chu Tianfeng. The Chu family was really bankrupt. Chu Tianfeng, a wave of hatred shot towards Ning Shu. Bankrupt? Chu Tianfeng didn't even know when he went bankrupt. Moreover, it was in front of a girl that he had feelings for. A man's dignity was trampled on. This fake uncle was definitely taking revenge on him. Wen Gu didn't expect the big Chu family to go bankrupt. Chu Tianfeng, who had always been dressed in a suit, was now wearing casual clothes. His hair was shaved, but now it was pulled down. His aura wasn't as strong as before, and there was a decadent aura about him. Perhaps it was because of Wen Ji's preconceived notions, but when she learned that Chu Tianfeng was bankrupt, she felt that he was very decadent. His clothes were wrinkled and yellow with sweat stains. He looked a little sloppy. Chu Tianfeng, try cooped up in the car for a few days without taking a shower. Anyway, Chu Tianfeng had never experienced not taking a shower for such a long time in his life. Feeling the shock and pity in the other party's eyes, Chu Tianfeng wanted to explode on the spot. Chu Tianfeng said seriously, "I'm not bankrupt." But Wen Gu didn't believe it at all. The Chu Tianfeng she knew was very particular. He would even wash his skin when taking a shower. How could he let himself be in such a sorry state? Moreover, Chu Tianfeng only went to high-end places. He wouldn't appear in such an ordinary neighborhood. Therefore, bankruptcy was a sure thing. Ning Shu's words successfully made Wen Ji's fear disappear. Because of her lifetime, Wen Gu was always a little weak in front of Chu Tianfeng. She was almost reflexively scared. But now that Chu Tianfeng was bankrupt, the halo around him was extinguished. It wasn't as dazzling anymore. At the same time, his charm wasn't as strong. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-36. Of course, Ning Shu knew that Chu Tianfeng had feelings for Wen Gu. After all, Wen Gu was such a beautiful and smart girl. There was no man who wouldn't like her. Especially since the two of them had such a past. Ning Shu said that Chu Tianfeng was bankrupt on purpose. Previously, he always gave her a hard time and always said that she was robbing him. Ning Shu said to Wengu, "Why are you here? It's not very safe here." Wengu asked back, "Then why are you here?" It wasn't that Wengu didn't want to leave, but it was the same no matter where she went now. Moreover, the road was very dangerous. People were not what they used to be and could do anything. She had a lot of food in her bracelet that could last her for a long time. Most importantly, the things in the bracelet would never expire. Even some vegetables, fruits, and the like would always be preserved in a fresh and juicy state. Even if they were not fresh, they would be fresh again after soaking in the spiritual spring. It was not safe to run outside at all. Moreover, her brother's body couldn't be so bumpy. If they kept living like this, they would wait until everything was over. However, Wengu didn't expect that the Chu family would go bankrupt and suddenly appear in front of her. Ning Shu said, "There are too many enemies in that city. You know that the Chu family has business partners and competitors. At this time, society is so chaotic that they can only run away." Chu Tianfeng was speechless. How could he be like this? What kind of words came out of his mouth so easily? He was speechless. He said it as if it was true. Most importantly, this girl seemed to believe it. Why was this girl so nice to the fake uncle but so repulsive to him? Chu Tianfeng was not a block of wood. He couldn't feel other people's feelings. Chu Tianfeng wondered if he had offended this girl in the past. Had he seen her before? Wengu only said, "The world is so chaotic now. Since you moved here, please live in peace. But if you have any bad intentions, don't blame me for being rude." There were secret manuals in her bracelet that could be used for cultivation. Although these manuals couldn't be used for cultivation, some martial arts could be used to deal with these two people. "Humph," Ning Shu gently said, "Yes, don't worry, I won't do anything to you." "What good would it do me to do anything to you?" Ning Shu acted like an elder and was especially amiable. Wengu looked at Chu Tianfeng. "You're not saying anything. Does that mean you have bad intentions?" Wengu was not afraid of Chu Tianfeng at all. No. Chu Tianfeng was a little speechless. Was there a need to treat him so differently? "Look at your shifty-eyed and wretched appearance. I can tell at a glance that you're not a good person." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. Chu Tianfeng was speechless. The counterattack that pierced through the roof was beautiful. Wen Ji's back was really straight now. Between men and women, it was either the east wind suppressing the west wind or the west wind suppressing the east wind. Now, Wengu had the advantage. Chu Tianfeng sneered. His expression was a little evil. He leaned against the wall and looked at Wengu. "Since I'm such a wretched person, I'll be letting you down if I don't do something." Ning Shu kicked Chu Tianfeng away and said to Wengu, "Ignore him. He's been a domineering CEO for too long. When you were a domineering CEO, doing something like that would dazzle people. But if you didn't do anything, you would be a hooligan. It depended on your face and money." Wengu glanced at Chu Tianfeng, whose face was trembling in pain, and sneered. This snort was very sarcastic. She. Chu Tianfeng was speechless. He pointed at the door and looked at Ning Shu indignantly. Ning Shu turned and went into the house, ignoring Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng had no choice but to follow Ning Shu into the house. He looked at the door on the wall and asked, "Aren't we going to deal with this door?" "Ning Shu, who would rob two men like us? The people next door are all weak. It's fine as long as we don't bully them." Ning Shu brushed the dust off the sofa and lay down on it, closing his eyes to rest. Chu Tianfeng saw that the house was full of dust and there was no place to stand. How could he live in a place like this? Chu Tianfeng now regretted following Ning Shu out. "You think it's dirty? Then clean it." Chu Tianfeng was dumbfounded. Clean it. Let him clean it. Ning Shu ignored him. Chu Tianfeng had no choice. He looked around the house and couldn't find any cleaning tools. So he thought about it and decided to borrow something next door. His feet almost walked uncontrollably to the next door. Ning Shu curled his lips. What a wild ambition. Chu Tianfeng naturally returned without success. He couldn't even borrow anything. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. What a piece of trash. He couldn't even borrow anything. Ning Shu had no choice but to do it herself and successfully borrowed the item. Chu Tianfeng was 100% sure that the woman next door was definitely targeting him. Why? In terms of appearance, he was definitely more handsome than Chu Yongning. He couldn't figure it out. Ning Shu handed the tools to Chu Tianfeng and let him clean. Chu Tianfeng had no choice but to clean it, but it was a mess. Even if it was a mess, Ning Shu wouldn't help. Ning Shu paid full attention to the next door. Under Ning Shu's mental power, he knew exactly what the sister and brother next door were doing. He often saw Wen Gu suddenly disappear. She obviously entered the bracelet and soon came out with a lot of things. The juicy fruits made people salivate just by looking at them. Wen Ji's brother was in good condition. Young adults all died of infection. Wen Hua wasn't infected. The most important thing was that his kidney failure was slowly getting better. Spiritual energy was really a good thing. And there would be people coming to find Wen Gu. Her brothers were all good-looking and not to be trifled with. Looking at their temperament, they should be rich and noble. They came to deliver things to Wen Gu. But Wen Gu rejected them all. She would use spiritual energy to give these people some water. It seemed that they were friends with Wen Gu. There were also some people who came to buy medicinal herbs from Wen Gu. These people bought medicinal herbs from Wen Gu and found that her medicinal herbs were especially good. Ning Shu felt that it wasn't that the medicinal herbs were good, but that the spiritual energy contained in the medicinal herbs had an inhibitory effect on this virus. There were many men coming and going next door. This made Chu Tiange very unhappy. Why were there always people looking for Wen Gu? And there was no lack of high-quality men. Chu Tianfeng drank jar after jar of vinegar. Although he repeatedly told himself that this damn woman had nothing to do with him, he still couldn't help but feel jealous. His heart was scratching his lungs. But there was nothing he could do. Chu Tianfeng took the supplies at home, such as biscuits and water. When he tried to curry favor with her with this kind of thing, he was given the cold shoulder. Chapter 34-37. Maybe it was for the sake of the world, or maybe it was greed. Wen Gu laughed out loud. Li Jun, you obviously want something, but you use such a clumsy excuse. I don't have anything, even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you. Li Jun looked at her. So you have something? Wen Gu, no, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not infected because my brother and I don't go out and don't eat dirty things. How can we be infected? Li Jun shook his head, still gently persuading Wen Gu with data. It's not that simple. I've done the statistics. If one is a coincidence, then everyone is the same. It's not a coincidence. Wen Gu, I don't want to hurt you. So many people are being tortured. If you really have a way, please help the people who are suffering. Wen Gu, I'm not the only one who has doubts now. Others also have doubts. I will protect you. Wen Gu was so disgusted by Li Jun's face that she wanted to vomit. There was no one who could talk about snatching things in such a beautiful and refined manner. This Li Jun was not like this before. Did she misjudge him? Wen Gu, I really don't want to hurt you. Wen Ji's temper was good and she was good-looking. It would be strange if no man liked her. Li Jun also liked Wen Gu. If Wen Gu could hand over those things, he could protect Wen Gu. Li Jun wanted both the woman and the money. He wanted the things and Wengu also wanted them. Wengu rolled her eyes and said impolitely, "Come on." Wengu looked at Li Jun with murderous eyes. She had always been careful, but she still noticed that if she let Li Jun go, there would be more people coming to find her in the future. There would be no end to it. Her brother's body could not withstand the torture. If he fled, something might really happen to her brother. So, when Ji's heart trembled. She had never killed anyone in her 2 lives. Wengu, a girl, could not kill someone. And she did not dare to. Especially when there were so many people. More than 10 burly men directly blocked the room. Wengu wasn't very confident in her skills. Was she really going to be caught today? The bodyguards behind Li Jun directly surrounded Wengu. These bodyguards were filled with valiance and killing intent. They were people with blood on their bodies. He had killed someone. It was difficult for 2 fists to fight 4 hands, especially when Wen Ji's kung fu was mediocre. She had not fought at all and overestimated her own strength. Wengu immediately subdued her. Wengu couldn't move. She was sweating profusely as she struggled, and she was panting from exhaustion. Wengu wanted to scream and wake up the uncle and niece next door, but she thought that this matter had nothing to do with them, so there was no need to involve them. Besides, even if the 2 of them came, it wouldn't change the situation. Forget it. After all, Chu Tianfeng was someone she loved in her past life. She only hoped that her younger brother would be able to calm down and find the uncle and nephew next door. Seeing Wen Ji's resignation and unwillingness, Li Jun said to the bodyguard, "Search the house and find the child." Wengu immediately raised her head and glared at Li Jun. She gritted her teeth and said, "Li Jun, Wenhua has always liked you. He treats you like his own brother. Doesn't your conscience hurt by doing this?" Li Jun said, "I won't hurt your brother. I just want you and your brother to come with me. With my protection, you will be safer." Protection? She was sure it was protection and not imprisonment. Li Jun knew that she cared about Wenhua the most. He wanted to use her as a bargaining chip to threaten her and force her to compromise. The child hidden in the cupboard was also found and pulled out. "Sister." Wenhua's expression was scared and confused. Obviously, he didn't understand that the big brother who had been very good to him before was now ruthless. Wengu endured the pain in her body and comforted her brother, "Don't be afraid. Sister is here. Take him away," Li Jun said. He turned around and saw a person leaning against the door, looking at the situation in the room with his arms crossed. Not one person, but 2 people. Wengu saw Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng and said coldly, "What are you doing? You want to steal my things again?" "Get lost," Li Jun raised his eyebrows. "What did they steal from you? I'll help you get it back." "Just some food. It's all in the dog's stomach now. So they also ate your things. Bring them back together. Bring them back and study them together." When Ji's expression changed, she said to Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng, "You guys go quickly." Ning Shu said to Chu Tianfeng, "Now is the best time for a hero to save the beauty. Go." Chu Tianfeng was speechless. If he couldn't find a wife, the Chu family line would end. It must be this fake uncle's fault. How could he face his grandfather? Chu Tianfeng was awakened by Ning Shu's kick and then came over. Chu Tianfeng was furious when he saw Wengu being treated like this. But the other party had more people, and all of them were martial artists. It was useless for him to go. Chu Tianfeng suddenly realized that he was a useless person. He was completely useless. It was so frustrating. At this time, only the violent uncle could go. Ning Shu sighed. "You deserve to be single. You deserve to be treated badly by Wengu. I've created an opportunity for you. Even if you can't beat them, you have to rush up and show off. If you break your leg and spit blood, Wengu will definitely be moved. Ning Shu moved his neck and pinched his knuckles. Come on. He could have directly used his spiritual force to attack, but he didn't want to be treated as a monster. It was better to use his fists honestly. Li Jun coldly asked the bodyguards to go. Ning Shu rushed forward and performed a series of actions in the crowd. When she turned around, she saw that everyone had fallen to the ground. Ning Shu blew his fist and looked at Li Jun. Can you get out now? You. Li Jun was a gentleman, just like Chu Tianfeng. Anyway, there were people below to help him. It was not his turn to do this kind of thing. He was as weak as Chu Tianfeng. All his men were knocked down. It seemed that he couldn't take Wengu away today. Halfway through, Li Jun said, "You're also here for Wengu. Can we cooperate?" "What cooperation? I don't understand. Now Wengu is under my protection. Get out if you don't want to die." Ning Shu twisted his wrist and said to Wengu, "I've caught this man. I'll leave him to you." Wengu nodded. "Thank you, uncle." Ning Shu, Li Jun's face suddenly became very ugly. The people under him were either unconscious or unable to fight. He came to catch people. How did he get caught? When did such a powerful person move in next door to Wengu? Chapter 34-38. Maybe it was for the sake of the world, or maybe it was greed. Wengu laughed out loud. "Li Jun, you obviously want something, but you use such a clumsy excuse. I don't have anything, even if I have, I won't give it to you." Li Jun looked at her. "So you have something?" Wengu, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not infected because my brother and I don't go out and don't eat dirty things. How can we be infected?" Li Jun shook his head, still gently persuading Wengu with data. "It's not that simple. I've done the statistics. One is a coincidence, everyone is the same. It's not something that can be explained by coincidence. Wengu, I don't want to hurt you. So many people are being tortured. If you really have a way, please help the people who are suffering. Wengu, I'm not the only one who has doubts now. Others also have doubts. I will protect you." Wengu was so disgusted by Li Jun's face that she wanted to vomit. There was no one else who could talk about snatching things in such a beautiful and refined manner. This Li Jun was not like this before. Did she misjudge him? "Wengu, I really don't want to hurt you." Wen Ji's temper was good and she was good-looking. It would be strange if no man liked her. Li Jun also liked Wengu. If Wengu could hand over those things, he could protect Wengu. Li Jun wanted both the woman and the money. He wanted the things and Wengu also wanted them. Wengu rolled her eyes and said impolitely, "Come on." Wengu looked at Li Jun with murderous eyes. She had always been careful, but she still noticed that if she let Li Jun go, there would be more people coming for her in the future. There was no end to it. Her brother's body could not withstand the torture. If she escaped, her brother might really be in trouble. So, Wen Ji's heart trembled. She had never killed anyone in her 2 lives. Wengu, a girl, could not kill someone. And she did not dare to. Especially when there were so many people. More than 10 burly men directly blocked the room. Wengu wasn't very confident in her skills. Was she really going to be caught today? The bodyguards behind Li Jun directly surrounded Wengu. These bodyguards were filled with valiance and killing intent. They were people with blood in their bodies. There were lives in his hands. It was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands, especially since Wen Ji's kung fu was mediocre. She had not fought at all and overestimated her own strength. Wengu immediately subdued it. Wengu couldn't move at all. She was sweating profusely as she struggled, and she was panting from exhaustion. Wen-go wanted to scream and wake up the uncle and niece next door, but she thought that this matter had nothing to do with them, so there was no need to involve them. Besides, even if the two of them came, the situation wouldn't change at all. Forget it. After all, Chu Tianfeng was someone she had loved in her previous life. She only hoped that her younger brother would be able to calm down and find the uncle and nephew next door. Seeing Wen Ji's resignation and unwillingness, Li Jun said to the bodyguard, "Search the house and find the child." Wen-go immediately raised her head and glared at Li Jun. She gritted her teeth and said, "Li Jun, Wenhua has always liked you. He treats you like his own brother. Doesn't your conscience hurt by doing this?" Li Jun said, "I won't hurt your brother. I just want you and your brother to come with me. With my protection, you will be safer." Protection? She was sure it was protection and not imprisonment. Li Jun knew that she cared about Wenhua the most. He wanted to use him as a bargaining chip to threaten her and force her to compromise. The child hidden in the cupboard was also found and pulled out. Sister. Wenhua's expression was scared and confused. Obviously, he didn't understand that the big brother who had been very good to him before was now ruthless. Wen-go endured the pain in her body and comforted her brother. "Don't be afraid. Sister is here. Take him away," Li Jun said. He turned around and saw a person leaning against the door, looking at the situation in the room with his arms crossed. Not one person, but two people. Wen-go saw Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng and said coldly, "What are you doing? You want to steal my things again?" "Get lost," Li Jun raised his eyebrows. "What did they steal from you? I'll help you get it back. It's some food. It's all in the dog's stomach now. So they also ate your things. Bring them back together." He would bring them back and study them together. Wen Ji's expression changed. She said to Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng, "Hurry up and leave." Ning Shu said to Chu Tianfeng, "Now is the best time for the hero to save the beauty. Go." Chu Tianfeng was speechless. If he couldn't find a wife, the Chu family line would end. It must be this fake uncle's fault. How could he face his grandfather? Chu Tianfeng was awakened by Ning Shu's kick and then came over. Chu Tianfeng was furious when he saw Wen-go being treated like this. But the other party had more people, and all of them were martial artists. It was useless for him to go. Chu Tianfeng suddenly realized that he was a useless person. He was completely useless. It was so frustrating. At this time, only the violent uncle was left. Ning Shu sighed. "You deserve to be single. You deserve to be treated badly by Wen-go. I've created an opportunity for you." Even if he couldn't beat them, he had to show off. His legs were broken and he was beaten until he vomited blood. It would definitely move Wen-go. Ning Shu moved his neck and pinched his knuckles. "Come on." He could have directly used his spiritual force to attack, but he didn't want to be treated as a monster. It was better to use his fists. Li Jun let the bodyguard go with a cold face. Ning Shu rushed over and did something in the crowd. When he looked back, everyone fell to the ground. Ning Shu blew his fist and looked at Li Jun, "Can you get out now?" You. Li Jun was a gentleman, just like Chu Tianfeng. Anyway, there were people below to help him. It was not his turn to do this kind of thing. He was as weak as Chu Tianfeng. All his men were beaten down. It seemed that he couldn't take Wen-go away today. Halfway through, Li Jun said, "You're also here for Wen-go. Can we cooperate?" "What cooperation? I don't understand. Now Wen-go is under my protection. If you don't want to die, get out." Ning Shu twisted his wrist and said to Wen-go, "I've caught this man. I'll leave him to you." Wen-go nodded. "Thank you, uncle." Ning Shu, Li Jun's face suddenly became very ugly. The people under him were either unconscious or unable to fight. He came to catch people. How did it become him who was caught? When did such a powerful person move in next door to Wengu? It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-41. Chu Tianfeng had never cared about what other people thought before because he hadn't met anyone who cared. He really wanted to strangle this annoying Chu Yongning. But when he thought of how Ning Shu had kicked the door down, he was speechless. There was nothing he could do about him. Chu Tianfeng looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. You like Wengu too, so you're causing trouble everywhere? Ning Shu shook his head. I care about Wengu as an elder. I've known her longer than you. Secondly, even if Wengu wants to choose a partner, she should find someone like me, safe, steady and most importantly, handsome. Chu Tianfeng didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore. Ning Shu thought for a moment and decided to teach Chu Tianfeng the ultimate martial arts. Cultivate it. It's up to you how much you can cultivate it. Is this the legendary martial arts? Chu Tianfeng was quite interested. Ning Shu said, no, it's Qigong. You'll accumulate some power called Qi in your Dantian. Chu Tianfeng asked expectantly, then can I become as powerful as you? Ning Shu said, of course. Impossible. I'm so powerful. You'll have to wait until your next life. Chu Tianfeng felt like flipping the table. He felt that he had been ruined. Ning Shu said, it's up to you whether you want to cultivate it or not. I bought it from an old man abroad. It said that it's useful, so I'm cultivating it too. What could Chu Tianfeng do? He could only start cultivating with the third-rate product. It was not easy to cultivate ultimate martial arts in a world without spiritual energy. However, if Chu Tianfeng wanted to absorb other types of energy, such as the power of the sun or the power of the stars, he wouldn't be able to absorb them. He couldn't even absorb spiritual energy and hadn't even started cultivating. It was impossible for him to show off. Ning Shu still suggested that Chu Tianfeng learn more combat skills. It was useless to rely on ultimate martial arts. It wasn't enough to just have strength without moves. After starting to cultivate and being tortured by Ning Shu every day, Chu Tianfeng's appetite increased a lot. There wasn't a single bit of food left in the house. Chu Tianfeng was probably really a good-for-nothing. Fortunately, she didn't eat much. Occasionally, she would go next door and ask for a small fruit to nibble on. Chu Tianfeng felt that since his uncle ate so little, he was probably about to ascend to immortality. During this time, Wengu had been considering whether to form an alliance with Chu Tianfeng and the others. If they formed an alliance, it would mean that his secret could no longer be kept. Looking at his brother's pale complexion and thin body, the little bit of meat that he had painstakingly gained before, after being scared by Li Jun, directly lost weight. Wen Ji's heart ached when she touched all the bones. Wengu asked Wen Hua, brother, how about we live with two people next door in the future? It's with the shorter brother. He's very powerful. I'm willing. He appeared like a hero, especially powerful. Children all admired powerful people. Moreover, this person had saved him and his sister. Wengu said, that's your uncle. Don't call him brother. All right. Wengu went next door and hesitated for a while before saying to Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng, I'm willing to form an alliance with you. Are you willing to accept me? Chu Tianfeng nodded, that's great. We're partners. In the future, living together is much easier than living as a weak woman. Am I right, uncle? Chu Tianfeng desperately winked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu said, since we're in an alliance, there are some things that we still need to know. Wengu raised her hand and there was a lustrous bracelet on her wrist. This bracelet isn't an ordinary bracelet. There's a space inside that can be used to store supplies. In addition to supplies, there's also a small piece of land that can be used to grow some fruits. Wengu observed the expressions of the two as she spoke. Ning Shu was expressionless while Chu Tianfeng was shocked. This was completely beyond his knowledge. It can be used to store things. Chu Tianfeng's focus was on whether or not the collected supplies can be placed inside. When the time comes, they can crazily hoard supplies. Recently, Chu Tianfeng felt that he had eaten too much. There wasn't much left of the things that he brought previously. Now that Wengu had a space, it would be much more convenient in the future. Wengu nodded, that's right. But this thing can only be used by me. Uncle, it's great that we have a mobile refrigerator in the future. The siblings are so pitiful. Chu Tianfeng said. Chu Tianfeng didn't have any thoughts about this bracelet. Moreover, only he could use it. Besides, Wengu was the person he liked. If they were really together in the future, Wen Ji's things would be his. Ning Shu didn't say anything. He just nodded. Wengu saw that the two men didn't have any thoughts about her bracelet for the time being and felt relieved. From now on, she would have to cultivate seriously. Even if the two of them had any thoughts in the future, she would have the strength to deal with it. Now, she and her brother both needed someone to take care of them. Moreover, they would only cooperate if the other party gave them some benefits. Wengu still had a little bit of trust in Chu Tianfeng. Even if Chu Tianfeng was bankrupt now, it was impossible to say that she didn't feel anything at all. Wengu said, I think we should leave here. Later, there might be people coming to find me and threaten me and my brother like Li Jun. Ning Shu didn't have any objections. Anyway, she came to this world to take care of the world. Ning Shu was a little familiar with the current state of the world, but he was still not sure. Following the two leads was definitely the right thing to do. Wengu discussed with the two of them, let's not go too far. Wenhua's body can't take it. She can't go too far. Ning Shu nodded, sure. You guys can discuss it. The male and female leads fusing. It was probably going to take a few days. A team was born just like that. Were Wengu and Chu Tianfeng going to continue their relationship? The four of them prepared to leave this place. When they went out, they put on masks and hats. The ultraviolet rays were especially strong now. When they went out, it was so hot that they became distorted and blurry. Now, the power supply department was closed. This summer was especially difficult. Chu Tianfeng drove to the next city. If he came across any supermarkets or gas stations on the way, he would start to crazily stock up on supplies and fuel. Now that he had Wengu, a human-shaped storage device, he was afraid that there wouldn't be enough things. He wasn't afraid of not being able to store them. He had to prepare the tires of the car. If they encountered the same situation as before, they wouldn't even have tires. In this kind of weather, walking with two pairs of legs was the rhythm of death. Along the way, the four of them got along quite well. There was basically no friction. However, Ning Shu was a little worried. This drought had already lasted for more than a month. If this continued, there would be no more water. All living things, regardless of whether they were animals or plants, needed water. Was the heavenly Tao collapsing or was it on purpose? It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-45. The sky cleared up, but the sun was still scorching, quickly evaporating the water on the ground. The ground didn't even have time to absorb the hard-won water droplets before the water evaporated. The ground was still dry and cracked. Ning Shu sighed. It was like trying to put out a burning cart with a cup of water. Was this bracelet a sign of hope or destruction? And Wengu clearly looked like the chosen one. Why would the heavenly Tao put something like a virus on Wengu? Ning Shu felt that the heavenly Tao probably wanted Wengu to save the world. Ning Shu couldn't help but pull his hair. He couldn't figure out the heavenly Tao. Did the heavenly Tao want to clean up the creatures in this world? Was that why it gave birth to this thing, to extract the vitality and spirit energy of the entire world? Then things developed to the current situation. When the strong survived and the weak were eliminated, they used the bracelet's spirit energy and vitality to start over. You want to make something new out of something old. So she might be the key. Now the world was on the verge of being scrapped. If this continued, the world would be ruined. The world was playing with him. Was this a plan or an accident? No matter what, Ning Shu had to complete his mission. Ning Shu called Wen Gu to the side. Chu Tianfeng saw that the two of them were going to the side alone and immediately followed them vigilantly. He was wary that the two of them were going to do something behind his back. Ning Shu saw Chu Tianfeng and directly waved his hand. Go to the side. Chu Tianfeng's suspicious eyes scanned Ning Shu and Wen Gu back and forth. What are you doing? Ning Shu just said, I have something to say to Wen Gu alone. What is it that you can't say in front of everyone? Why do you have to say it secretly? What secrets do you have? Chu Tianfeng didn't want to leave even more. Wen Gu was the woman he had set his mind on. Was Chu Yongning trying to steal her away? Ning Shu, children should go to the side when adults are talking. If you don't listen, I'll have to knock you out and let you sleep for a while. You. Faced with such a threat, Chu Tianfeng was really helpless. He couldn't beat him. During this period of time, he felt that he had the ability to fight. After all, he had to break through the encirclement every day. He was surrounded more and more often. Chu Tianfeng moved to the side, but he still stretched his ears, wanting to hear what the two of them were talking about. A single man and a single woman. What should they say? Ning Shu said to Wen Gu, what do you think the world will become in the future? Wen Ji's expression was very serious. It should be very bad. If this continues, this world will be unimaginable. Ning Shu placed his hand on Wen Ji's shoulder and looked at her solemnly. If I told you that you can save the world, would you think this? Ahahaha. Wen Gu laughed dryly. How can I be the person who saves the world? Uncle, stop fooling around. Old fart, you're taking advantage of me. When Chu Tianfeng saw Ning Shu put his hand on his shoulder, he was a little annoyed. However, the two of them looked very serious. It didn't seem like they were flirting either, so Chu Tianfeng didn't go over. Chu Tianfeng was very unhappy. They had lived together for so long and were allies. Could it be that these two still had secrets that he didn't know? Annoyed. Ning Shu said, to be precise, it's the bracelet on your wrist that can save the world. When Ji's expression changed and she took a step back. She immediately put her hand behind her back and covered the bracelet with her other hand. She didn't expect that Chu Yongning, who usually seemed to have no desires, was also thinking about her bracelet. That's right. Chu Yongning wanted to buy her bracelet in this lifetime. Chu Yongning's bracelet was also unique. On this journey, the person Wen Gu trusted the most wasn't Chu Tianfeng, but Chu Yongning. But now that Chu Yongning said such words, Wen Gu still felt very hurt. Save the world, such an old excuse. Li Jun already said it before, so this excuse is useless. Wen Gu said directly and also showed her attitude. She would definitely not take out the bracelet. Save the world. She couldn't save it. If she handed over the bracelet, what would she and her brother do? How would she and her brother live? Without the bracelet, how would they survive in such a bad world? Along the way, she saw all kinds of tragedies. Wen Gu was very glad that she had this bracelet. Otherwise, her brother would have died long ago. Asking her to hand over the bracelet now was asking her and her brother to die. Wen Gu had a clear understanding of herself. Relying on herself and her brother, even if they formed a group, they wouldn't be able to survive. Wen Ji's eyes looking at Ning Shu became much colder. Before, there was warmth and trust, but now it disappeared without a trace. It was replaced by vigilance. Ning Shu didn't care much about Wen Ji's emotions. After all, it was Wen Ji's thing. Ning Shu said, "The spiritual energy and vitality in your bracelet space is the key to saving the world." Wen Ge shook her head, "Uncle, do you want this bracelet?" Using the principle of the common people, the previously June was disgusting, and now Chu Yongning was also disgusting. Sure enough, people were all the same. Wen Ge was very disappointed. It seemed that she had to leave with her brother. Staying with someone who always had intentions on her, she wouldn't even know if she was killed. But the world was big, where should she go? She encountered a lot along the way. If it wasn't for the fact that only she could enter the bracelet, Wen Ge wanted to take her brother directly into the bracelet and not have to live outside. But her brother couldn't enter. This was both a benefit and a disadvantage. Even if others took away her bracelet, they couldn't use it. The disadvantage was that she couldn't even let people close to her in. She could only live with her brother in the world outside the bracelet. But the outside world was so dangerous, and people's hearts couldn't stand the test at all. Wen Ge thought that they could trust each other. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows, "What do I want your bracelet for?" Wen Ge wanted to laugh, "If you don't want to save the world, then what do you want my bracelet for?" Ning Shu, "The concept is different. I don't want this bracelet, but this world. The spiritual spring in your bracelet space can suppress the outbreak of this virus. I believe you know it yourself. So you want to distribute the spiritual spring in here to everyone?" Wen Ji's eyes were full of sarcasm. Saying that he wanted to save the world, he just wanted to seek personal gain. She just wanted to live a good life with her brother. She didn't want to use this bracelet to do anything earth-shattering. Given the current situation, it was very difficult to live a stable life. Ning Shu shook his head, "You don't need to distribute it to everyone, just—" Ning Shu saw the deep sarcasm in Wen Ji's eyes and raised the corner of his mouth, "Just break the bracelet." Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 34-46. There was no need to give spiritual water to them one by one. As long as the bracelet was broken, the spiritual energy and vitality would be released. Take a look. Take a look at it. If he used the summoning curse technique, all the problems would be solved. Wen Ge was stunned. Break the bracelet? This was too much of a waste. They wanted to snatch the bracelet, but it made people feel pity and angry. "Yes, break it," Ning Shu said. Wen Ge shook her head and refused. "I don't agree. The bracelet can't be broken like this. What's the use of breaking it? Without the bracelet, how can my brother and I live? Are you going to sacrifice my brother and me to help those people I don't even know? I am a weak woman and my brother is a patient. His body can collapse at any time. We are also people who need to be saved, but who will save us? No one will save us, but we have to sacrifice the things we rely on. Uncle, do you think this is reasonable?" Ning Shu looked at her with a helpless and pitiful look. "Even if you want to break the bracelet, can't you collect and store more spiritual water in advance? This way, even if the bracelet is broken, you will still have spiritual water." Wen Ge was speechless. This was not the point at all, okay? If they only left behind some spirit water, how could they have an endless supply of spirit spring water that seemed to never be used up? Everyone knew what to choose. Wen Ge asked Ning Shu. "If I ask you to give up your things and you don't have such things, will you give it up?" Ning Shu, "Of course not." Wen Ge sneered. "So, what position do you have to ask me to give up the bracelet and break it? Can you tell me how to break the bracelet? Why do you have to break the bracelet? If you break the bracelet, there will be nothing left. Without spiritual water, there would be no space to store supplies. Moreover, the things in the space would not expire or deteriorate. What refrigerator in the world could be better than this space? Snatching the bracelet was one thing, but breaking the bracelet? What the hell was this? He was crazy. If he broke the bracelet, there would be nothing left. Moreover, could he be sure that breaking the bracelet would be of any use to this world? Could it suppress the virus? Please, why don't they just tell everyone that they have something that can kill the virus? Then, like the savior of the world, they will distribute the spiritual water to everyone and break their bracelets. Before, Wengu was angry at Li Jun for snatching her things, but now facing Ning Shu, she felt deeply powerless. Regardless of the reason why Li Jun snatched things, it was normal. He just wanted to have the bracelet and use the bracelet to bring profits and power. But this Chu Yongning was purely crazy. He wanted to break the bracelet. If the bracelet was still there might still be hope. But without the bracelet, there was really no hope. She held the bracelet tightly and said directly, "I'm sorry, I can't give you the bracelet, and we're not suitable to be allies anymore." Chu Yongning had already revealed his true colors, and she no longer needed to feign civility. Moreover, Chu Yongning's fighting strength was so strong that she couldn't beat him at all. Moreover, her younger brother's health wasn't good. In short, the situation was very unfavorable for her. Ning Shu saw Wen Ji's vigilant expression and didn't say anything. He just said, "I'll give you time to think about it." "No need to think about it, I can show you the answer now. I won't give you the bracelet, it's my thing. Don't use the common people's hat to pin it on me. The common people's lives are not my responsibility. The common people have never done anything good to me." Ning Shu just raised his eyebrows. Wengu was right. If it was Ning Shu wouldn't be willing to hand it over. The common people indeed had nothing to do with her. However, Wengu didn't reach a certain realm. Like Ning Shu, he wouldn't die or grow old. Perhaps in this life, he could still see the collapse of the Law Sea. She didn't need to rely on the Law Sea to survive. But Wengu was different. Wengu still needed this world, because without this world, she couldn't survive. Oh, maybe she could live in the bracelet. But, when this world was gone, this bracelet wouldn't have a place to support her life. Could she go to other worlds? Or maybe she could absorb the life force and spirit energy of other worlds. Ning Shu squinted his eyes and looked at Wen Ji's wrist. If this bracelet wasn't a product of this world and wasn't arranged by the heavenly Tao, then it could really be a virus. It could wander in many worlds. This bracelet had the same effect as the wild system. After all, they both absorbed the fate of the world and absorbed the life force of the world. It was like a virus. Wengu didn't want to talk to Ning Shu anymore. She went to the car and said to Wen Hua, "Little brother, we should go." Wen Hua asked blankly, "Big sister, where are we going? Are we going with them?" Wen Hua's face was very pale, and his aura was very weak. This was the result of Wen Ji's great care. Otherwise, Wen Hua would have died long ago. Wengu pursed her lips, "We're not going with them." Why? Even if Wen Hua was a child, he knew that it was safe to follow these two men, especially Chu Yongning. He had always been the core of the team. When it came to fighting, it all depended on him. Chu Tianfeng was the assistant doing the hard work. Wengu was in charge of logistics. She would distribute some spirit water according to the situation of everyone. But if the two of them left by themselves, the situation would be very dangerous. "Why are you leaving? What did that old fart say to you?" Chu Tianfeng walked over. When he heard Wengu say that she was leaving and wanted to leave the team, he immediately frowned. "If there's anything, we can discuss it properly." During this period of time, Chu Tianfeng had become a lot darker. He was filled with the aura of a man. At this moment, his expression was solemn and serious, giving people a feeling that he was very trustworthy. Wengu glanced at Ning Shu and said, "No need. Let's just separate like this. Wengu was a little afraid that the other party would reveal his true intentions. She could enter the bracelet, but her brother couldn't. If she was alone, it would be very convenient. But she couldn't abandon her brother. Give me a reason. A reason why you want to leave. Chu Tianfeng said, otherwise, the outside world is so dangerous. It's impossible for me to let you go. Chu Tianfeng's domineering tone made Wen Ji's heart explode. She was sure that Chu Tianfeng had colluded with Chu Yongning to take away her bracelet. Bastard, I won't give the bracelet to you. Chu Tianfeng was sprayed with saliva all over his face. He was very confused. Who wants your bracelet? Wasn't this bracelet useless to the others other than Wengu? What's the use of snatching a trash? Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 34-47. If he couldn't use it, he might as well give it to someone who could use it. He could take the person, but not the item. As a businessman, Chu Tianfeng still had basic common sense. There was no need to offend someone who could use something that couldn't be used. Wouldn't that be stupid? Wengu was stunned for a moment, but she still said, haha, your uncle wants my bracelet, and he wants me to break it. Wengu didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that the bracelet was much smaller. It was tightly wrapped around her wrist, and it was a little uncomfortable. There was a small gap before, and the bracelet was swaying on her wrist, but it was so tight that it hurt her wrist. It seemed that the bracelet also had spiritual energy. It knew that someone wanted to break it, so it was tightly wrapped around her wrist. Wengu stroked the bracelet, and her heart was filled with love. The bracelet was so spiritual. Even if it didn't have any spiritual energy, she still needed it. No matter what, she had to protect the bracelet. The bracelet relied on her like a child, and it hugged her tightly. What? Chu Tianfeng was also dumbfounded. Breaking the bracelet, his uncle probably had Alzheimer's disease. Although Ning Shu looked very young, because he was an elder, Chu Tianfeng felt that this person was very old. Chu Tianfeng said to Wengu, calm down, I'll go ask. This uncle of mine has always been unreliable. Chu Tianfeng walked to Ning Shu and directly asked what happened. If it was in the past, Chu Tianfeng would have been furious. But after going through so much, Chu Tianfeng had matured a lot. Most importantly, he couldn't beat the other party. Ning Shu spread his hands and said, you think I'm dreaming? Nephew, I'll tell you the truth. I'm afraid this world is going to be destroyed. Unless the bracelet is broken, the spiritual energy and vitality inside can slowly repair this world. Chu Tianfeng was speechless. There was no scientific evidence at all. And even if it was broken, what was the use? If it was useless, he would lose a bracelet for nothing. This bracelet was really too convenient and too awesome. To actually break such an awesome item, it was too much of a waste of God's gift. Chu Tianfeng said, no wonder Wengu wants to leave. You're just daydreaming. Ning Shu stretched lazily. Wishful thinking. What do you think of this bracelet? Very impressive, very good. Ning Shu, these are things that are beyond everyone's understanding. I don't think it's too far-fetched to be able to break and suppress the virus. If there were benefits, he wouldn't feel that there was anything strange about it. Even if he felt it, he would ignore it. Chu Tianfeng, what if it doesn't work? Uncle, you scared Wenj to death. How can you suddenly say something like that? Ning Shu, then what should I say? Chu Tianfeng sighed. If I were Wengu, I wouldn't be able to take it either. You actually want Wengu to give up this thing for someone else? Ning Shu rolled his eyes. The bracelet you're using now is like drinking poison to quench your thirst. Do you understand? Without the world, let's play to death together. He didn't know if this world had the power to deal with this bracelet. If it didn't, then this world would be reduced to nothingness and collapse. If this bracelet was within the scope of the Heavenly Tao's calculations, this bracelet would collapse sooner or later. It would return the spiritual energy and vitality to this world. It would also achieve the purpose of cleansing. The large-scale death of living creatures made this world a lot emptier. Therefore, when Ji's bracelet was definitely going to be gone. Without the Heavenly Tao, there was still her. If there was the Heavenly Tao, she wouldn't have to do anything. If the Heavenly Tao couldn't do it, then she would do it. When necessary, she would take extreme measures. She felt that Chu Tianfeng was a little dependent on this thing now. If he relied on something, when this thing disappeared, the inconvenience would be very, very prominent. Ning Shu said, "This thing is not good. It's addictive. Learn to store your own food." It was very convenient. It wouldn't spoil and would become fresh. Now all the supplies were in Wen Ji's bracelet. No matter what Chu Tianfeng found, he would throw it to Wen Gu. Wen Gu put it in the bracelet. "You're good, I'm good, everyone is good." No one could leave the other. If Wen Gu was going to leave, she would also take away the supplies collected during this period. Chu Tianfeng was in a dangerous situation. There was no water or food. Chu Tianfeng said, "Don't say anything to her about breaking the bracelet." Ning Shu just nodded and didn't say anything. Chu Tianfeng acted as the peacemaker and said to Wen Gu, "Don't worry. I've already told him. He's a little muddle-headed. He's been living abroad for a long time and has always been so weird. You can enter the bracelet yourself, but you have to think about Wen Hua. If you leave, can you protect him? Also, his body can't take it. The world is so chaotic now. It's normal for people to eat people. Especially when you look so fresh. Now, when I see you, my first impression is food, very delicious food." Now, everyone was sallow and emaciated. They were all desperate and fearful. But Wen Gu was fresh, white and tender. Her skin was so delicate that it could be broken by the wind. It was too tempting. Everyone was releasing the evil in their hearts. Such a beautiful girl, if they raped and ate her, it would not only satisfy their desires but also fill their stomachs. Chu Tianfeng was really worried about Wen Gu. She definitely wouldn't have a good life with her brother. If they didn't meet people, it would be fine. But once they met people, they would be fish on the chopping board. Wen Gu also knew that, but it was also very dangerous to stay beside these two men, especially Chu Yongning. Who knew if he would steal her bracelet? Maybe he would directly tie her up and use a stone to break the bracelet on her wrist. Wen Gu was frightened by the image in her mind. Anyway, now she was in a dilemma. Wen Gu looked at Chu Tianfeng. This man was a little different from his previous life. Perhaps because of this disaster, he had experienced so much and changed people. At this moment, he looked at her with a gentle and certain gaze. Wen Ji's nose was sour. She suddenly felt like crying. Did this mean that she didn't misjudge him? At least, she didn't love the wrong person in her previous life. Wen Ji's heart came up with an idea. She wanted to take Chu Tianfeng with her and not let Chu Tianfeng be with Chu Yongning. The three of them could go together. But she couldn't say such words. She was just an outsider, and they were blood-related uncle and nephew. Moreover, Chu Yongning's martial arts were very strong. In this chaotic world, it was very safe. Wen Gu didn't dare to guarantee that if she said it, Chu Tianfeng wouldn't agree. But now, Wen Gu felt afraid when she saw Chu Yongning. The bracelet was tightly wrapped around her wrist, indicating that the bracelet also felt danger. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 34-48. It's too dangerous. Let's go. Wen Gu looked at Chu Tianfeng with a complicated expression. Sorry, we can't go together. I'll leave something for you guys. Wengu didn't go to the extreme. She took all the supplies and made a few big water bottles. These plastic bottles were very big. If they drank sparingly, they could drink for a long time. And it was spirit water. Compared to the endless supply of spirit water in the bracelet, this little bit of spirit water was nothing. But now that there was a serious shortage of water, this little bit of water was precious. Wengu had already done her best by doing so. She had also taken out a lot of resources. Chu Tianfeng frowned. Do you have to do this? With me around, he won't say anything to you. And he's just saying. Don't take it seriously. It's dangerous outside. Chu Tianfeng felt that he was worried sick. The two of them were quarreling and he felt very awkward. It was like a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. A man in the middle, Wengu, it wouldn't be dangerous. It wouldn't be dangerous. The bracelet didn't have this reaction. This was a warning. Wengu didn't want to stay. The problem was that she had a car. Wengu didn't have a car. This car was Chu Tianfeng's. It was a very good car. Other than changing the tires, there were basically no problems. And it was bulletproof. Otherwise, the windows would have been broken. Wengu looked at the car and couldn't help but sigh. Her brother couldn't travel long distances. At this time, it was up to Chu Tianfeng to be a gentleman. Chu Tianfeng, who was struggling with his gentlemanly demeanor, it was a disaster to not have a car. They could go together. Why was he so conflicted? Ning Shu walked over and said, since she doesn't want to go with us, forget it. Let's go together. Go my ass. Chu Tianfeng roared in his heart. This uncle of his really couldn't do anything right. He was really all brawn and brains. When Wengu saw Ning Shu, she immediately took a few steps back and held her wrist tightly. Perhaps it felt that danger was approaching, so the bracelet tightened a lot. It was so tight that her wrist hurt. Even her fingers were a little bloodshot. Wengu was once again sure that she couldn't stay with them. The bracelet had never reacted like this. Ning Shu narrowed his eyes and grabbed Wen Ji's left hand. The bracelet on her wrist was exposed. The bracelet was completely attached to Wen Ji's wrist, leaving no gap. It was impossible for Wengu to remove the bracelet now. Ning Shu could only say, this bracelet is going to abandon you. Wengu wanted to pull her hand back, but Ning Shu held it tightly. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and her face turned red. What nonsense are you talking about? Ning Shu said, perhaps it sensed danger, so before the bracelet left you, it wanted to deprive you of your vitality. Wengu drank a lot of spiritual water and ate things that contained spiritual energy. Her body was full of vitality and spiritual energy. Ning Shu said, there's no such thing as a free brunch in this world. Why do you have it and no one else has it? You'd better give it up now. Wengu sneered. For the sake of this bracelet, he was willing to do anything. He said that he was giving up on her, but Wengu felt that the bracelet was protecting its owner. She knew that this person was up to no good, so she had such a reaction. At the same time, Wengu felt more and more that this Chu Yongning was different. The way he spoke and acted was very different. Give up on her? Impossible. She had always been wearing this bracelet. It was left to her by her grandmother. It was this bracelet that saved her from danger and improved her embarrassing situation. With this bracelet, her brother survived. If there were demons in the world, she would be willing to be with them, because angels would not help her. When she was desperate in her previous life, she was so embarrassed that she betrayed herself. In this life, having a bracelet made her life better. Giving it up was impossible. Wengu broke free from Ning Shu's hand and said to Chu Tianfeng, I'm leaving. I'll leave the bracelet to you. Wenhua, let's go. Wengu asked her brother to get out of the car. Wenhua obediently got out of the car. He looked at Ning Shu. Uncle, will my sister really be in danger? Ning Shu did not speak. He looked a bit unfathomable. Chu Tianfeng wanted to chase after him, but seeing that Ning Shu was not backing down, he was a bit embarrassed. Uncle, what's going on? You're an idiot. I already said that without the vitality and spiritual energy in the bracelet, the world will end. Now it's already the end of the world, Ning Shu said lightly. There was no one else who was as retarded as his nephew. Uncle, are you serious? Chu Tianfeng frowned. What the hell are you talking about? How can you be sure? What did this uncle of his learn abroad? Why was he so mysterious? I'm sure. The longer it drags on, the world will be finished. Then. Chu Tianfeng's brows furrowed into a caterpillar. Will it harm Wengu in any way? Ning Shu shook his head. I don't know. Now the bracelet is firmly tied to her. It can't be taken off. Who knows if it will integrate into her flesh, into her body, and then, integrate into her soul. Her soul will be devoured. Chu Tianfeng's face trembled. He felt a little scared. Chu Tianfeng asked, should we find her and talk about it? Ning Shu shook his head. There was no such thing. Even if he knew that this thing was not good, he would not hand it over. Because everyone's survival had become extremely difficult. With this thing, they could live a little longer. Help, help. Wengu, who had just left, called back with her brother on her back. The run was very bumpy. Wenhua, who was on her back, was shaken until his face turned pale. Other than the two of them, there was a group of people behind them. They were holding bricks, wooden sticks, and rusty iron pipes. Some of them were holding knives. These people's faces were filled with craziness and desire. They chased after the two of them. Wengu had cultivated before, so she ran faster than these people who were full. She ran back to Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng. There was no choice. They could not beat so many people. Seeing Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng, these people became even more excited. The more people, the more food they could eat. And why were these people so white? It was as if they had never been exposed to the sun. One had to know that the sun was very strong now. The sun had created deep grooves. People's skin was many shades darker. Now, when people saw people who were white, the first thing that came to their mind was not that they were white and beautiful, but that they were tender and looked delicious. Wengu came in front of the two of them and said, "Help me." She was also unlucky. She encountered a group of people the moment she went out. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 34-49. Such groups acted together like bandits. When they met someone, they would rob them and they would not waste the body. If they were alone or in small groups, they would swarm over and slaughter them as if they were slaughtering pigs. They did not feel any psychological burden at all. They had met several groups before, but because Ning Shu was there, everyone stayed in the car safely. Chu Tianfeng would get out of the car and fight with them. Wengu and her brother only needed to stay in the car. Facing so many people, Wengu had no choice but to run back. Ning Shu only had 4 people on his side and there were at least 20 people on the other side. There was no doubt about it. Ning Shu rolled his eyes. Why should I help you? Chu Tianfeng said, these people will not let us go either. Just kill them. Even if they wanted to kill Wengu and her brother, these people would not let them go. It was better to sell them to Wengu. Maybe they could leave together. To be honest, Chu Tianfeng looked at the supplies left by Wengu and was worried because there was not enough space in the car to put them. But if he had to throw away these resources, he would rather die from overeating. So it was so convenient to have Wengu. Ning Shu, what does it have to do with me? I don't need to eat. Wengu was a bit embarrassed. She had just run away and now she ran back. She was a bit embarrassed. But there were so many people on the other side. Especially the light in their red eyes, it was chilling. These people were all crazy. Like animals, they would kill their own kind and eat the corpses of their own kind for a bite of food. Even animals would not eat the bodies of their own kind. The harsh living environment drove people crazy. The harder it was, the more they wanted to live. Ning Shu sat on a rock. The rock was hot and Ning Shu's butt hurt. Nephew, this is your chance. Be the hero and save the beauty. It's your turn. She would leave this world sooner or later. When she died, Chu Tianfeng would be at a loss. Chu Tianfeng's face was a bit green. How could he fight with so many people? And he was bare-handed while the other side was all armed. He might not be able to last one round. Ning Shu held his chin and said, I can fight. Just give me the bracelet. Hello. When Ji's expression changed, Ning Shu continued, I'm despicable, aren't I? I'm threatening you. Everyone, this is not an easy task. You have to risk your lives. Just watch from the side. Besides, you're no longer my ally. Why should I risk my life for you? Either you die or give me the bracelet. If she gave the bracelet, she could live, but if she didn't, these people would tear Wengu apart. Wengu was the prettiest one here. She was a feast for the eyes. Many of the dirty men present had lewd looks in their eyes. Obviously, he had been thinking about Wengu countless times in his mind. When Ji's body trembled, she did not know what to do in this situation. Abandoning the bracelet was absolutely out of the question. The bracelet tightened around her wrist, and it felt even tighter. It was so tight that her wrist bones hurt. Wengu shielded her brother behind her. She saw that Ning Shu was calm and unperturbed by the situation in front of him. Right now, Wengu really hated her own incompetence. She had no power, so now she was being threatened. Chu Tianfeng was in a dilemma. Ning Shu whispered, Uncle. Chu Tianfeng's voice was a little coquettish. Ning Shu was very disgusted. Think about it. I won't stop you. But I won't, unless you give me the bracelet. She was with an old mother before. Now that you're back, you still want me to help you. What do I owe you? If you want to live, you have to pay the price. Chu Tianfeng sighed. If he could, he would have done it too early. This old man was taking advantage of the situation. Wengu must be very conflicted now. This group of people was getting closer and closer, with a valiant and murderous aura. Perhaps it was due to the birth of evil thoughts, these people's bodies and eyes carried an evil aura. From Ning Shu's eyes, these people were shrouded in a thin layer of black gas. Wengu still wanted to protect her bracelet. She did not ask for help, but carried Hua and continued to run. Now that Chu Tianfeng and Chu Yongning were holding them back, they had a chance to escape. These people would not give up Chu Tianfeng and Chu Yongning to chase them. Moreover, they had a car. These people would definitely want to kill the two of them and snatch the car and the supplies in it. Ning Shu looked at the backs of the two and smiled. Wengu was still smart. In this kind of environment, she had to be calculative. Otherwise, she would not be able to survive. This group of people directly divided the team into two teams. One team stayed to deal with Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng. 10 against 2, Wengu still could not handle it. Moreover, there was no way to run back now. If she ran back, she would run into them head-on. Ning Shu shrugged his shoulders. It did not matter. If Wengu died, she would take the bracelet directly. If she ran back, then it was still the same. If you want to live, give me the bracelet. Ning Shu released his spiritual power to ensure that everything was under his control. If Wengu wanted to live, she could enter the bracelet and get rid of the pursuit. However, Wen Hua could not enter the space. Therefore, without Ning Shu's help, Wen Gu became very passive. She had to face danger at all times. For Wen Gu to give up her brother's life, this was probably a very painful thing for her. Ning Shu just sat there and didn't move. She could just let Chu Tianfeng use her spiritual power. Previously, they could not win with so many people. Now that half of them were gone, they should be able to win. In fact, there were only 5 or 6 people left. Most of them ran to chase after Wen Gu. What would a man think when he saw a woman? Delicious and fun. Chu Tianfeng took out a weapon from the car. He was made of flesh and blood. Since the other party had weapons, he naturally had to fight with weapons. Chu Tianfeng fought a little fiercely. He probably wanted to save Wen Gu. Chu Tianfeng's training during this period of time was a little effective. The 5 or 6 people could not do anything to Chu Tianfeng. Wen Ji's spiritual water had spiritual energy. She needed spiritual energy to cultivate peerless martial arts. It was convenient for Chu Tianfeng. Chu Tianfeng's figure flashed nimbly between them. He held a knife and slashed at these people. Blood splattered out. It splashed all over Chu Tianfeng. His face was full of blood and it was full of the smell of blood. Chu Tianfeng was a little nauseous. These people relied on their numbers. Now that they saw how fierce Chu Tianfeng was, they were scared. Moreover, the blood on him and his teammates was tempting them. These people hurriedly covered their wounds. Blood covered their hands and they directly licked the blood with their tongues. They licked their own blood with a satisfied and greedy face. This scene was enough to provoke people. Chu Tianfeng was disgusted. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 3450. Not long after, Wen Gu ran back with her brother on her back. Ning Shu was speechless at the torment. Behind them were the men who looked like wolves and tigers. Wen Ji's face was ashen. She shouted to Ning Shu, "I will give you the bracelet." If she didn't give him the bracelet, she would die. Wen Gu couldn't go into the bracelet and give up her brother in exchange for her own life. Ning Shu snapped his fingers and said to Chu Tianfeng, "Go." Chu Tianfeng, don't talk like you're releasing dogs. Ning Shu reached out and grabbed Wen Ji's wrist, trying to remove the bracelet from Wen Ji's wrist. Very good, he had a good reason for doing things. Wen Gu couldn't go back on her words even if she wanted to. It hurts, it hurts. The bracelet on Wen Ji's wrist was tighter and tighter. It was almost embedded into her skin. And the bracelet was getting thinner and thinner. In the end, it was the size of a wire. It was shrinking and shrinking into Wen Ji's flesh. Wen Gu was in so much pain that she felt her wrist was being sawed. Wait, it hurts too much. Wen Ji's face was pale. She started to tremble uncontrollably. She was about to pass out. Ning Shu could see that the bracelet was going to merge with Wen Gu. Will it work? Chu Tianfeng couldn't help but ask when he saw this scene. Especially when he saw Wen Gu in so much pain. This bracelet was in Shanghai. Ning Shu said directly, "You just need to stop him. Bear with it, I'll break it." Wen Gu exclaimed, "If you break it, there will be no spiritual water. My brother's body won't be able to take it." If it weren't for her brother, she would have gone into the bracelet. If she broke it, there would be no spiritual water. Her brother's body hadn't been nourished yet. Ning Shu said, "I'll collect some for you after you break it." It was possible to collect some spiritual energy at the moment of breaking it. It seemed that the bracelet was unwilling to be broken like this. If it was a bracelet with a mission, it might accept its fate. However, if it didn't have a mission, or if it already had the basic instinct of a living creature to avoid harm, it wouldn't be willing to be shattered like this. Ning Shu directly released a huge amount of spiritual power and used it to cut the bracelet. Ah! Wengu screamed in pain. It was as if she was being dismembered, and her flesh was being sliced off piece by piece. Stop, stop now. Wenji's tears flowed as she struggled with all her might. I regret it, I won't hand over the bracelet. Instead of suffering like this, it would be better to just die. It was too painful. Ning Shu knew that the bracelet was doing this on purpose. It wanted to hurt Wengu so that Wengu would struggle. His mental power cut into the bracelet, making an uncomfortable sound like fingernails scratching a blackboard. Everyone present couldn't help but cover their ears. It was too unpleasant. Wengu was in so much pain that she felt like she was going deaf. The sound she heard seemed to be amplified infinitely, as if the sound was arranged by the bracelet. Wenji's heart was in a mess as she screamed, "Let go of me, let go of me." The bracelet had given her so much and made her life less difficult, but she had to give up this bracelet. Wengu felt that she was really inhuman. The bracelet was covered with layers of barriers, and Ning Shu directly used his sharp spiritual power to attack. This thing was a dead object after all. Although it was a treasure and had a consciousness to protect itself, it wasn't that powerful. With a boom, the bracelet exploded and turned into specks of light. At the same time, a strong and vast vitality and spiritual energy gushed out. Ning Shu reached out and collected some spiritual energy. When the bracelet broke, Wengu screamed and fainted, lying softly on the ground. Ning Shu immediately used the incantation technique to prepare for rain, but the vitality and spiritual energy disappeared without a trace. Ning Shu, where were the vitality and spiritual energy? Ning Shu looked at the spiritual energy and vitality in the bottle. Fortunately, he had collected some. After all, he had promised Wengu before. Chu Tianfeng dealt with everyone present and looked up at the glaring light. The sun was still shining and the air was dirty. Nothing had changed. Ning Shu, who the hell knew what was going on? The bracelet had clearly been broken, but why didn't it change at all? The life force and spirit qi quickly dissipated like water vapor, evaporating into nothingness. The scene was very awkward. It's too big outside. I'll get Wengu into the car, Chu Tianfeng said and carried Wengu into the car. Wenhua was timid and his voice was sobbing. Will my sister be okay? She's fine. She's just shaken. She'll wake up soon. Don't worry, you go to the car and stay there, Ning Shu said to Wenhua. Wenhua was already scared out of his wits. Now that his sister was unconscious, he could only obediently get into the car. He realized that he had implicated his sister. Ning Shu put his hand on his eyes and looked up at the sky. The thief was embarrassed. He thought it was the bracelet's problem. But now that the bracelet was broken, the world was still the same. Could it be that the world needed time to recover? Wengu woke up and looked at Ning Shu with an indifferent expression. Wengu wasn't the only one looking at Ning Shu. Everyone looked at Ning Shu. Didn't they say that the world would change if the bracelet was broken? The world was still the same. There was no change. No, there was a change. The wind was even louder and the sun was even hotter. Ning Shu, it's easy to destroy, but it's hard to build. Even a sick person needs time to recover. Everyone, Wengu touched her empty wrist and felt empty and disappointed. She felt like her heart was being torn apart. Ning Shu gave a bottle of spirit water to Wengu. This is for your brother. Wengu quickly took the bottle and felt the cool feeling inside. She finally heaved a sigh of relief. At least with this spirit water, her brother's body could hold on. Chu Tianfeng said, "Don't worry. You left me a lot of spirit water before. It's enough for your brother." Wengu left a lot of materials and spirit water behind when she left. Chu Tianfeng comforted her. It's okay. I'll take good care of you. He broke your bracelet. He'll protect your life in the future. Ning Shu rolled his eyes and didn't say anything. The spirit energy and vitality had disappeared without a trace. He still had to take care of this world. If it recovered, it would be good. If it didn't. The four of them were on the road again. Without the bracelet, all kinds of inconveniences were revealed. Some fresh and tender things would rot if they weren't eaten early. Fortunately, they were slowly getting used to it. When Ji's mood had been low, losing the bracelet was like losing half her life. Chapter 34:51. The bracelet was broken, but the world didn't change. Instead, the situation became worse. The virus became more rampant, and it mutated to the point that it couldn't be cured. Read the full story. Read the latest chapters at novel full. Those who were infected died beyond recognition. Even if they were about to die, they couldn't bear to eat such corpses. What should they do? There was still no rain. There was no water in this world that could be used. All kinds of creatures died on a large scale. Along the way, everyone's faces were numb. They were already used to death. The three of them looked at Ning Shu, speechless. They said that the world would change after the bracelet was broken, but they didn't see where the change was at all. And they even lost a bracelet. They really wanted to beat him to death. He was an unreliable person. Why did they believe him? Ning Shu looked out of the car window. Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Ning Shu thought that the situation in this world would become better after the bracelet problem was solved, but, what was going on? Why did it become even more serious? All kinds of creatures died in droves. Because of the rapid decrease in the number of creatures, Ning Shu and the others sometimes couldn't even see people when they drove. Before, there were still people robbing them. Now, there were fewer robberies, and the road was smooth. This actually couldn't be considered a good thing. There were infected people lying motionless on the side of the road. If it weren't for the slight rise and fall of their chests, they were no different from dead people. They were waiting for death. They couldn't even cry for help. Ning Shu rubbed her forehead. This time, she was really at a loss. Chu Tianfeng asked, "Why is this happening?" Ning Shu, "I don't know. Maybe it's natural revenge." The world was in a mess, and now the world was taking revenge. It couldn't be called revenge, but Ning Shu really couldn't understand the evolution of this world. He couldn't understand it at all. But was it going to destroy all the creatures in this world? Wouldn't the situation get better if they didn't? This was too scary. Everything had to be restarted. Ning Shu looked at the three people in the car. This person was nourished by spirit energy. Since the outbreak of the virus, he hadn't been infected. This meant that the spiritual energy and vitality were indeed restraining the virus. However, the huge amount of spiritual energy and vitality in the bracelet instantly disappeared. However, the spirit chi and life force were still in this world. Wen Hua's hoarse voice rang out in the carriage. "Barrier, will we die too?" Wen Gu hugged him tightly. "No, I won't let you die." However, President Wen Hua was still infected by the virus. His entire body began to fester. Abscesses grew on his body one after another, swelling up one after another. From the top of the abscesses, he began to rot slowly. These pustules would grow bigger and bigger until they covered the entire body, making it unbearable to look at. Wen Gu didn't dare to touch her brother, afraid that she would hurt him. Wen Hua repeatedly had a fever, and in the end, his consciousness started to blur. Wen Gu hugged her brother and cried. She had lost her bracelet, and now she had lost her brother. He was the only one left in this world. Wen Gu gave Wen Hua a lot of spirit water and took a lot of anti-inflammatory medicine, but it was useless. This virus was like a terminal illness. Once infected, there was no way to cure it. Wen Hua was unconscious, and it had only been a few short days since he took his last breath. Wen Gu was in a trance. She didn't believe that her brother had died just like that. It was Chu Tianfeng who reminded her to dig a hole and bury Wen Hua's body. It was better to leave it at the side of the road for wild dogs and flies to gnaw on. My brother didn't die. Wen Gu gritted her teeth. She turned to look at Ning Shu and rushed in front of Ning Shu. She grabbed Ning Shu's collar with both hands. Return my brother, return my bracelet. You said that the bracelet was broken and the virus could be suppressed, but now my brother has been infected. You liar, liar. She wailed, her voice desperate and helpless. Ning Shu let her grab him. He had an indifferent expression. He didn't apologize or say a word. Wen Gu cried until her body went soft. She fell to the ground and covered her face with both hands. She cried until her shoulders shook. Chu Tianfeng sighed. He told Wen Gu not to be sad and to bury the body. Chu Tianfeng also felt shocked when he saw the state of the disease. He tried his best not to touch the body. It was too scary. There were pustules all over his body, and the pustules were still flowing with pus. It was too painful. Wen Gu didn't avoid it at all. She carried her brother's body and chose a place to bury him. After the body was buried, Wen Gu said to Ning Shu and Chu Tianfeng, "Let's part here. I can't be with you anymore." Wen Gu looked at Ning Shu with deep disgust, but she also knew that she couldn't beat Ning Shu. She could only ignore him. Anyway, she couldn't go with them. As for whether she would live or die in the future, Wen Gu didn't care at all. Without her brother, she didn't have so many worries. Chu Tianfeng immediately grabbed Wen Ji's hand. "Don't go. It's dangerous for a weak woman like you." Wen Gu shook off his hand. "It's none of your business, Chu Tianfeng. What's my relationship with you? You keep interfering with me." Ning Shu said, "Why are you leaving? Don't go." "I'll leave." Ning Shu felt that it was necessary to explore this world alone. Since these two wanted to be together, let them be. With that, Ning Shu turned and left. Before the two of them could react, Ning Shu left very quickly. After a while, they couldn't even see his back. Chu Tianfeng, why were they all so bad-tempered? Chu Tianfeng felt that his temper was quite bad. However, Wen Gu and the old fart were both so bad-tempered that they left just like that. How could he survive without water and food? By then, he might not even be able to see his corpse. Ning Shu left the two of them and cast a spell. He wanted to use the incantation technique, but he found that there was no spiritual energy at all. Where did the huge amount of spiritual energy in the bracelet go? This world was probably going to collapse. The sun was scorching hot. Ning Shu had to rely on her pair of legs to walk. She had seen many tragic scenes that made her hair stand on end. It was very sorrowful. This was purgatory on earth. It was Ning Shu's first time seeing a world so cruel. Now he could basically confirm that this world became like this because of the manipulation of the heavenly Tao of this world. He had already broken the bracelet, but the world's situation didn't improve. This meant that it wasn't the time yet. Was he really going to destroy all living beings? Then it probably wouldn't be long before they went extinct. After they went extinct, would they be reborn and give birth to living beings from scratch? Ning Shu was walking when he suddenly felt the ground under his feet start to shake. Ning Shu, earthquake. The shaking became more and more intense. In the end, he couldn't stand. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 3452. The earthquake was very violent, and the dust on the ground flew up. Those empty cities and those concrete buildings also fell down with a rumble. Because of the earthquake and the Earth's crust, some volcanoes started to erupt. Magma spewed out and buried everything in its path. Ning Shu looked at the menacing magma and quickly turned to run. She was now a spiritual body. Magma didn't do much harm to her, but it did hurt. The temperature of the magma wasn't low. She was now in a disaster movie, and it was the kind of disaster movie with very impressive special effects. It was very, very real. To be able to survive under the torture of the force of nature, that person was probably a superhuman. Many volcanoes erupted all over the world, and the earthquakes caused the ground to shake and crack like an abyss. All the living creatures in this world were finished. Not a single one was left, not a single one was left. In the face of such a terrible disaster, people were very weak. Even Chu Tianfeng and Wen Gu, who had luck, would probably die. No matter how lucky they would still be finished if they were targeted by the entire world. Hot volcanic ash floated in the air. If people breathed in the volcanic ash, they would probably suffocate. There was no oxygen. Even if people escaped the earthquake and the volcano, they couldn't escape suffocation. Ning Shu sighed. The heavenly Tao of this world was really ruthless. First, it infected humans with a strange virus and slowly tortured them. Then there were earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that could wipe out many living creatures. Now the air had become very dirty, and there was no oxygen that living creatures needed. How was this world going to evolve? Was it going to wipe out everything from the past? Ning Shu had always been puzzled by the vitality and spiritual energy. If the huge vitality and spiritual energy disappeared in an instant. Wasn't this supposed to be a simple mission? I'm probably going to die. When Ji's face was blue. This was a sign of lack of oxygen. Her nostrils were filled with thick volcanic ash. Don't talk. If you talk, you'll suffocate faster. Chu Tianfeng's face was also purple. He was struggling. She didn't know if Chu Yongning was still alive. She thought that the previous virus was the limit, but she didn't expect the next one to be the main event. Wen Gu smiled bitterly. Her expression became more and more absent-minded. Suffocation was a very painful expression. Vaguely, she saw a person appear in front of her. This person's figure was blurry, and even his facial features could not be seen clearly. Ning Shu looked at these two people. Indeed, these two people also had the same fate. Ning Shu couldn't grab a handful of air for the two of them to breathe. Uncle. Chu Tianfeng saw that Ning Shu could still walk like this. Chu Tianfeng only cried out once before his eyes widened and he breathed his last. In terms of physical endurance, women were more resilient, while men were more explosive. Chu Tianfeng had died, but Wen Gu was still angry and asked the question she had been wondering about. Why aren't you dead? Anyone could tell that something was wrong with the other party. Ning Shu, because I died a long time ago. Wen Gu also died. Only then did Ning Shu realize that this world did not give him any chance of survival. Ning Shu asked the system, Dan Qing, do you think this world is normal? This was the first time Ning Shu had contacted the system after coming to this world. Dan Qing. It's probably normal. After all, there are thousands of planes that evolve. Some worlds are more friendly to living beings. Even if they evolve, they won't kill them all. But if some worlds think that the existence of living beings will hinder the plane's evolution, then they will kill all living beings and start all over again. They can even let the world recuperate and rest for a while. Actually, the world also has resentment. If it has resentment towards living beings, it will directly destroy them through evolution. Heaven and earth were heartless, treating all things as straw dogs. Whether it was humans or other spirits, they were all the same in front of the heavenly Tao. There was no difference. Therefore, when all living beings were destroyed, the world's evolution would begin. She still had to stay in this world and see what direction it would develop in. Outside the world, in the void, a few people looked at the dim and cracked world. All living beings in this world are destroyed. And he was a little speechless. This world has a bad temper. The Grand Elder frowned. Who's taking care of this world? Why is it like this? And he just said, we'll know once we check. Grand Uncle looked at the message sent by the main system. When he saw the name, he curled his lips in disdain. I'll go in and take a look. Be prepared. It's best to be prepared when it collapses. This plane was very close to the Sea of Laws. There were many planes behind it, a long string of planes. If it collapsed, it would be very troublesome. There were so many planes behind it. They wouldn't be able to hold it back. And he nodded. Go. Go in peace. This plane was full of cracks. Grand Uncle dripped into the plane like a drop of water. As soon as he entered the plane and saw the devastated world, his expression was a little indescribable. He accurately found the location of the plane's guardian. When he saw Ning Shu nestled in the cave, his expression was even colder. After taking care of the world like this, he could still sleep in the cave. He was really big-hearted. Grand Uncle walked in and kicked Ning Shu awake. Ning Shu opened his eyes and saw Grand Uncle's constipated face. He was even more upset. Grand Uncle, what's going on? Ning Shu. You should ask what's wrong with the world. I'm just a person. Who knew that this world would be so radical and play like this? She had already broken the bracelet, so this world could be saved. The living beings could probably be saved too. But the world didn't do that. Instead, it made the world scarred. Grand Uncle wasn't very satisfied with Sang Liang's work. He found such a person to take care of the plane. Ning Shu wasn't a fool. It wasn't like he couldn't see Grand Uncle's dissatisfaction. He said directly, okay, you can take this mission. I don't want the mission reward. You can do it. You don't have to serve me. This world was willful. What could she do? She was also desperate. Grand Uncle, what's with your temper? Can't you be more responsible? Ning Shu, I've always been very responsible, but I don't like to be ignored. Ning Shu didn't believe that if Grand Uncle was here, the plane wouldn't do this. Grand Uncle, can you tell me the details? Ning Shu told Grand Uncle about the matter with a solemn expression. Grand Uncle listened. The spiritual energy and vitality have disappeared. Yes, it's gone. Ning Shu still couldn't figure out where the vitality and spiritual energy had gone. Is the bracelet hot or what? Do you have to break it so quickly? Chapter 34:53. If the bracelet was broken now, it would have been a much better time to break it. Read the latest chapters. Read the latest chapters for free. Now that the world is fragmented, the spirit energy and vitality can be nurtured. Ning Shu said, I don't know, because the hand is about to be embedded into the body of the person wearing it. If it is completely integrated, it will be difficult to deal with it. It suddenly disappeared. I think the world absorbed it. The world should be repaired now, right? Senior Uncle raised his eyebrows. Should be. Ning Shu. Shouldn't be. Senior Uncle, are you sure? Ning Shu, shouldn't it be? Ning Shu was confused. I think it was absorbed by the world. I'm sure it was absorbed by the world. Senior Uncle didn't speak again. Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, if it doesn't work, we can use some external spirit energy. Ning Shu remembered that there was still a pool of spirit liquid in his system space, and there were spirit fish in it. If he got some spirit liquid to this world, it might be of some help. Since Senior Uncle was here, it meant that this world couldn't collapse. The price of collapse was a bit high. Senior Uncle nodded. Let's wait and see. If the spirit energy and vitality disappear for no reason, then use props. Ning Shu nodded and didn't speak again. The two men were nestled in the cave. In this world, there were only two people, Ning Shu and Senior Uncle. Ning Shu was holding a dry branch and rowing on the ground. Senior uncle stood on the side. The two of them didn't interfere with each other's business and stayed there for a long time. Day and night changed back and forth. Senior uncle went out in a flash, probably strolling around the world. Ning Shu felt that it was irresponsible for him to stay in the cave like this, so he also went out and strolled around the world. The whole world was barren. There was no green at all, only a vast expanse of yellow. Particles floated in the air. These volcanic ash and dust began to slowly accumulate, forming a thick layer of dust on the ground. Footprints were formed one after another. The whole world was silent. There was no sound, no vitality, and dead silence. It hadn't rained for a long time. It hadn't rained since the outbreak of the virus. There was no water and no life. Water was the source of life. Ning Shu met Tai Shu while strolling. He said to Tai Shu, "I think it's time to intervene. Let's wait a little longer. Derivation isn't something that can be done in 1 or 2 seconds." Ning Shu didn't say anything. In this regard, Tai Shu had more experience. If there was a problem with the divination, he couldn't blame her. She was the one who insisted on intervening. There was nothing wrong with giving this world some spiritual energy. There's no need. According to the spiritual energy and life force in the bracelet, this world has a direction of evolution. With the extra energy, the evolution of the world might change. Ning Shu nodded. "Alright, you're right." Ning Shu wanted to go back. His heart was extremely tired. Doing this kind of guarding mission, the plane was like a child. It had no idea what this world was up to. Everything was uncertain. After witnessing one disaster after another, Ning Shu felt a little depressed. Disasters were really something that destroyed humanity. So many creatures had died. Now the world of samsara was probably going to explode. Tai Shu said, "Cheer up. Now we have to find the energy points of this world. Since the spiritual energy and life force have been absorbed, they will be released slowly. I can't hold it in for so long." Ning Shu felt that the world was really naughty sometimes. Why are the rules and laws of this world collapsing? Tai Shu frowned. A world had laws and rules. The laws and rules maintained the operation of the world. The energy made the world operate. The laws and rules were the procedures that allowed the world to reproduce according to this procedure. If the laws and rules were collapsing, then this world was really going to collapse. Ning Shu, ouch, damn it. It was too tiring. After spending such a long time, this world still played itself to death. Ning Shu said, "Do you want me to bring some spiritual energy to this world? Maybe it can be saved." "Go ahead." Tai Shu nodded. Ning Shu asked Danqing to teleport him back to the system space and took away all the spiritual energy in the pool. There was only a little left so that these spiritual fish wouldn't be dried to death. But it was also tight. These spiritual fish lay down and became salted fish one by one. Ning Shu returned to the world again. He held the bottle and said to Tai Shu, "Should I release the spiritual energy now?" Tai Shu nodded. "Yes. But it shouldn't be very useful." After checking it, he found that the world was like a water tank with a hole. No matter how much water was poured in, it was useless. Tai Shu set up a large barrier to cover the whole world. This way, the spiritual energy wouldn't leak out. He wanted to see how much this world could absorb. Ning Shu poured the contents of the bottle on herself, drenching herself from head to toe. Ning Shu came to this world as a soul. He was exposed to the sun, viruses, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Ning Shu felt that his soul was covered with a layer of dust. After being drenched by the spiritual water, he immediately felt refreshed. The filth in his soul was about to be washed away. Ning Shu used the spiritual energy to make it rain. However, the rules of this world were collapsing, and the laws couldn't be invoked. The spiritual liquid fell to the ground. The dry ground absorbed the soul, but it only moistened the ground a little. Soon, it evaporated again. Although it evaporated, Ning Shu felt that there was spiritual energy around him. Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to maintain his image as a man. He directly changed back to his original appearance. Maintaining a man's appearance also required energy. Ning Shu asked, "What should we do next?" "Wait." Then they could only wait. Was it really painful to do such a task? He felt that this world was probably doomed. After all, even the rules and laws were collapsing, which meant that the heavenly Tao was collapsing. A terminally ill patient was struggling on the verge of death. They had to accompany this patient in his struggle. Ning Shu and Tai Shu were speechless. The two of them didn't speak for a long time. Ning Shu squatted and played with mud. He couldn't be bothered to look at Tai Shu's face. Now, the leader questioned her ability to work. She was nothing but a quail. There were no changes in the world. Ning Shu said to Tai Shu, "Why don't you get some more spiritual energy?" "Okay." Ning Shu thought she had contributed all the spiritual liquid. It was time for her to go to Tai Shu to find something rich in spiritual energy. Why was it her again? Ning Shu said tactfully, "I've handed over all my spiritual energy. I don't have any more." It was a tough job to contribute both money and effort. Tai Shu, "Oh, then we can wait a little longer." Ning Shu, "Okay, whatever you say." He just didn't want to find something with spiritual energy. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 3454. Lazy Guy. Ning Shu despised him in his heart. On the phone, Ning Shu and Tai Shu wouldn't be killed by the harsh environment, so they wandered around the world. Anyway, Ning Shu didn't know how long he would wander in this world. The hot weather had slowly cooled down, which made Ning Shu happy. After all, sunlight was very young. It was always a little uncomfortable when it shone on the soul. But after the heat subsided, it began to enter the extremely cold weather. It began to snow. It was snowing heavily. Soon, the world was shrouded in ice and snow. Everywhere he went was a vast expanse of whiteness. It was so dazzling that his eyes hurt. It was unbearably hot before, and now it was unbearably cold. Tai Shu's expression relaxed a lot. Ning Shu observed his expression and felt that this cold should be good for the world. It was mainly because Ning Shu couldn't lift his waist now. After all, he was the one taking care of this world. He didn't have much experience the first time. Until a small bud grew out of the ground, Ning Shu immediately said happily, "It's done, it's done." After the ice and snow melted, grass grew out. Grass looked very ordinary, but it was the foundation of all things, the lowest end of the food chain. Only with this could living creatures be born. Ning Shu breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally done. Fortunately, it was a miracle. Ning Shu felt that he might not be able to set up a barrier around the entire world. He didn't have that much energy to support it. Ning Shu asked, "Do I have to set up a barrier to take care of the world?" "That's not necessary. If the world collapses a little and can't hold the energy, set up a barrier to protect and gather the energy. You've been staying in the world when you're taking care of the world. Don't you know how to go out and take a look?" When the outside collapsed and couldn't hold the energy, he was in a daze inside. Ning Shu, "Oh, I remember." He could still go out. The first time he felt a little numb, Ning Shu remembered. Not only did he have to stay in the world, but he also had to check the situation outside. Was there a crack? Should he set up a barrier? The organization has information on guarding planes. Go back and take a good look. You don't know anything and came to guard planes. Ning Shu, "Okay." I'll go back and take a good look. Taking care of a plane was a technical job. When a blade of grass appeared, the entire world flourished. However, other than grass, there was nothing else, not even insects. The seawater gradually rose. There was already water, and the world was slowly recovering. Ning Shu left the world and saw that there were still cracks in the plain. When these cracks disappeared, the world would be completely healed. Ning Shu returned to the world and started playing with grass. He didn't know when the world would be able to give birth to living beings. Generally speaking, living beings were born from water and then migrated to land. Gradually, the entire world was submerged by the seawater. The grass that grew before was also submerged. However, as time passed, these grasses also mutated and became seaweed that could survive in the sea. Ning Shu went out of the world from time to check on the bitwall. Although the cracks were decreasing, the speed was very slow, probably because it required energy. He asked the grand uncle to find something with spiritual energy, but he was too lazy to do it. She had already contributed the spiritual liquid of the spiritual fish. Now, those spiritual fish were still flipping their bellies in the pool. As long as the cracks in the world disappeared, the world would be fine. It was only a matter of time before living beings were born. The arrangements had been made clearly. The grand uncle looked at the vast sea and said, "You'll stay here and wait until the cracks in the bitwall heal." This mission was really bad. There's no reward this time. If we hadn't discovered it in advance, the world would have collapsed. There would be a lot of trouble in the future. Ning Shu, I didn't make any contributions, but I worked hard. He also lost a pool of spiritual liquid. The grand uncle, useless people talk about hard work all day long. Is it something to be proud of when you don't have the ability to do hard work? Don't you think it's shameless and thick-skinned? Ning Shu, he didn't think it was shameless or thick-skinned. He had been busy until now, but he didn't get anything and still had to guard this world. Ning Shu's heart was full of resentment, and he looked at the grand uncle faintly. The grand uncle ignored Ning Shu's gaze and left the world in a flash. Ning Shu exhaled, blaming himself for not being prepared in advance. Ning Shu said to the system, "Help me find that information." Dan Qin grunted and said, "It's also my mistake. I wanted you to experience the mission of guarding a bitwall. And the mission given by the main system is also the simplest. I didn't expect there to be so many twists and turns." The system thought this mission was simple. In fact, it was Ning Shu's fault for not being prepared enough before. He wouldn't accept this kind of mission so easily next time. The responsibility of this kind of mission was really great and related to the whole world. It didn't matter if it was related to such a bitwall. If this bitwall collapsed, it would affect the bitwall next to it. It might explode like firecrackers. The responsibility was too great. Ning Shu stood on a hill that hadn't been submerged by the sea yet. The smell of the sea was very strong, but it was also full of vitality. There would probably be living creatures born from the sea. It might be a year, a few decades, or even 10,000 years. Ning Shu didn't care when living creatures were born in this world. Instead, he was worried about when the bitwall would heal. As long as it healed, his mission would be over. It was simply a blind effort, and he couldn't even make ends meet. He didn't know if those spiritual fish would die. Although there was a little spiritual liquid left, it couldn't even submerge the fish's backs. Ning Shu was alone in the world, and he was going to stay there until the end of time. Squatting on the hill, he was going to turn into a statue. After the mission was over, he had to go to the void world to find a treasure to calm himself down. He was so tired. His heart was tired. He was so tired that he didn't like it. He didn't know how long he had waited, but Ning Shu finally saw the bitwall heal in his lifetime. He carefully checked every part of it. If there was a little bit that hadn't healed, he had to leave it behind. He had to wait until it healed completely and there were no sequelae before he could leave. Ning Shu felt that she had played herself to death in this world. Ning Shu waited until the last crack had healed, and the bit wall was no longer scarred. Only then did she leave the world. Back in the system space, Ning Shu lay on the sofa without saying a word. He closed his eyes and said, "Now, even if something big happens, don't wake me up." It was tiring to do 10 ordinary missions. Dan Qing said, "I found the information for you. You can take a look when you wake up." Ning Shu was tired from doing missions, and Dan Qing was also tired looking at him from the side. She felt mentally and physically exhausted. Dan Qing thought to herself, sure enough, this kind of mission was a little too difficult. It's the fastest novel website. Chapter 3455. After Ning Shu woke up, he read through the information found by the system. He didn't expect that taking care of the plane was so complicated. He had to be careful. This was much more difficult than doing ordinary missions. Ning Shu felt that he had to do it a few more times before he could get the hang of it. Only then could he know what to do, just like handling the star stones. Ning Shu put down the information and rubbed his eyebrows. He wanted to absorb some soul power, but he found that there was no gain this time. The reward had been deducted by the Grand Uncle. It consumed the soul power and exhausted both his mind and body. The problem with this world was that the speed of the car was too fast, and it collapsed when making a big turn. Originally, the influenza and various natural disasters happened frequently, and it actually had an impact on the world. It caused cracks to appear in the world. Even if the bracelet was broken, the spiritual energy and vitality were lost. The various disasters that followed came as scheduled. At this time, it was impossible to stop them even if one wanted to. Ning Shu glanced casually and saw that the Peerless Martial Arts on the bookshelf was shining slightly, especially the words on it, which were glowing. Ning Shu stretched out his hand, and the Peerless Martial Arts book flew into Ning Shu's hand. The Peerless Martial Arts book was much thicker and heavier. Ning Shu wanted to enter the world, but he found that he had entered an extremely small space. This space was very cramped, and it was not easy for Ning Shu to turn around. Ning Shu was speechless. Why did the space inside the Peerless Martial Arts book become so small? Before long, the space inside the Peerless Martial Arts book would be reduced to nothing. The Peerless Martial Arts book would become a lump of iron. Ning Shu was speechless. The Peerless Martial Arts book was probably going to be destroyed and become a brick. The Peerless Martial Arts book changed endlessly. Ning Shu didn't know how the book would change, and his heart was numb. However, as long as the Peerless Martial Arts book didn't explode, Ning Shu said that the Peerless Martial Arts book could change as much as it wanted. He just didn't know if it would hurt to hit someone with the Peerless Martial Arts book or if it would hurt. Ning Shu picked up the Peerless Martial Art book and lightly slammed it on the tea table. The tea table shattered with a "pada" sound. Wow, it could really be used as a brick. However, Ning Shu wouldn't take this thing and smash it everywhere. After all, what if this Peerless Martial Art was destroyed? The Peerless Martial Art was probably Ning Shu's feelings and memories. The Peerless Martial Art was like an old object, with bits and pieces recorded on it. He did not ask for any great fortune from the Peerless Martial Arts. Even Ning Shu didn't need any great fortune from Peerless Martial Arts. Because of the changes in the Peerless Martial Arts, Ning Shu had the time to take out his various items, wipe the dust off, and rearrange them. Beautiful roses have always been like this, never withering. He didn't know what kind of energy allowed the roses to resist the power of time and not wither. Ning Shu touched the God-striking whip. In the previous battle, the God-striking whip had absorbed a lot of energy. There were energy waves on the surface of the God-striking whip. It was probably digesting the energy. He didn't know what the God-striking whip would evolve into. After all, it was a treasure in the void. It was a treasure on the same level as the Grand Uncle's gun. If he cultivated it well, he would have a weapon in the future. He wouldn't have to use the peerless martial art book as a brick. Since it was a treasure in the void, should he put it in the void to absorb some energy? Ning Shu touched the whip. The whip was very cold. When Ning Shu touched the whip, she could feel the whip slowly absorbing her soul power. The whip was actually absorbing her soul power. Although it wasn't much, it was still absorbing. This kind of indiscriminate absorption was absorbing the enemy's energy and the user's energy. This wasn't good. It seemed that this whip didn't recognize her as its master at all. Ning Shu stroked the whip and felt that the whip was trembling slightly. Then, the whip started to tremble and flew everywhere in the space. Ning Shu didn't know what happened to the whip. The whip hit the wall of the system space. It seemed that it wanted to leave. Ning Shu was shocked and quickly grabbed the whip handle. As a result, she was pulled out of the system space together with Ning Shu and flew into the void. There was a person standing in the void. He was dressed in white, and his clothes were fluttering in the wind. He had long hair, and a wooden hairpin was casually placed on his head. Just his back was truly magnificent. The whip dragged Ning Shu towards this person. He turned around. The hair on his temples fluttered slightly, and he smiled. He reached out and grabbed the whip. Ning Shu grabbed the other end. The two of them were like a tug-of-war competition. "Miss, this is my whip," he said in a clear voice. The God-striking whip was rapidly absorbing Ning Shu's soul power, but Ning Shu didn't let go. She raised her chin slightly. "Now, this whip is mine." Ning Shu was tired. After all this time, she was also an existence that was being nurtured. There must be this person's consciousness in this whip, and it was buried very deep. In the face of Ning Shu's arrogance, she was still not angry. She said, "This whip is indeed mine. There is my consciousness imprint in it. It doesn't belong to whoever has it." Ning Shu still said, "Now that the whip is in my hands, it is mine." How did it become an existence that was being nurtured? She was very unwilling to accept it. The man smiled. His eyebrows and eyes were like a painting. His whole face was like a flower that suddenly bloomed. His whole person became lively. Ning Shu was indifferent to his smiling face. No matter how beautiful his smile was, it couldn't be more important than the God-striking whip. "I heard Zhu Menxing mention you. When he mentioned you, he gritted his teeth. There are many things in life. How can you live if you are angry about everything? Oh my, he's a Buddhist." Ning Shu was about to lose the God-striking whip. Ning Shu couldn't be Buddhist at all. She couldn't give the whip to this man. The man's expression was a little innocent. "But this is my whip. It is mine now," Ning Shu said coldly. "Okay." The man let go. The whip wrapped around Ning Shu's waist and didn't let go at all. Moreover, it was absorbing Ning Shu's soul power. The scales on the whip vaguely opened and directly pierced into Ning Shu's soul. Damn, it really fucking hurts. If it hit someone else, it would be lethal. If it hit her own body, the feeling was called sour. Ning Shu understood what this man meant. He wanted to let the God-striking whip absorb her soul power. He didn't need to do anything and could make the God-striking whip stronger. Ning Shu struggled, but the God-striking whip was tightly wrapped around her. This God-striking whip. Ning Shu was really angry. She originally wanted to nurture the God-striking whip like a child. She didn't expect that there was someone else's consciousness imprint in the God-striking whip. This imprint was too subtle. She didn't notice it at all. The person before was nurturing the God-striking whip. Ning Shu was also nurturing the God-striking whip. Chapter 34-56. Ning Shu glanced at the fairy-like man. She felt that her spiritual power was disappearing rapidly. The little bit of spiritual power that she had painstakingly accumulated was actually going to be absorbed by a whip. Was it easy for her to gather spiritual power? Since the whip was determined to absorb her spiritual power, then she would destroy it. She couldn't let it absorb all of her spiritual power. Ning Shu used the will of death to resist the whip. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to get the whip. Ning Shu didn't want to let this man take advantage of him. He looked like a Buddhist. How could he be a Buddhist? If nothing went wrong, this Buddhist man was definitely a secret member of that faction. Even if he wasn't the leader, he was still an important person in the faction. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the capital to let others nurture the whip for him. Ning Shu held the whip that was covered in thorns. The sharp scales pierced into Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu immediately used the will of death. It was just a matter of who couldn't endure it. He also used the will of death to erase the consciousness imprint in the whip. If possible, Ning Shu didn't want to destroy the whip. This was a Xiantian treasure. It was something that was born in the void. It wasn't easy to find one. Now that this treasure had taken shape, it had absorbed a lot of energy. Ning Shu also spent a lot of effort. The whip's consciousness was blank and barren. There was basically nothing. Now, the whip was still an ordinary whip. It didn't have a consciousness. After thinking about it, he also imprinted a consciousness imprint. You can imprint, I can imprint. Two consciousness imprints couldn't coexist. The two consciousnesses would fight each other. Because the whip was imprinted by Ning Shu, it wouldn't attack Ning Shu. Instead, the two consciousness imprints would fight for it. Ning Shu held the whip and chuckled, now that this whip has my consciousness imprint, this whip is mine. The Buddhist man blinked, how is it yours? Ning Shu blinked. You said that the whip has your imprint, so it's yours. Now that the whip has my imprint, logically speaking, it's my whip. The man shook his head and laughed. Your logic is very bandit. There's no such thing. Ning Shu, this is my spoils of war. Your subordinate lost to me, so this is the thing. You want to take my spoils of war. Your logic is even more unreasonable. These people had lost to her and wanted to snatch her things. Now that they were snatched from her, they wanted to snatch it back. Dream on. Bian Jiji's two consciousnesses were fighting. Only one of the two consciousnesses could remain, and that person would become the master of the whip. Ning Shu's consciousness was like a black thread that slithered around like a snake. This consciousness was attached to the will of death. Death was dark and terrifying. On the other hand, the man's consciousness was a white grain the size of a grain of rice, emitting a faint and warm luster. It was a stark contrast to Ning Shu's darkness. Ning Shu's consciousness slithered over and attached itself to the grain of rice, wanting to devour the other party's consciousness. Although Ning Shu had the will of death, the other party's rice-sized consciousness didn't move at all. He was indeed a big shot. There was no hurry. She could slowly grind it out. Ning Shu sat down. She was tired from the mission anyway, so she took the opportunity to rest. She didn't have much, but she had a lot of time. She could spend it until the end of time. Ning Shu looked at him standing still, allowing his clothes to flutter. He looked gentle, as if he wouldn't get angry. He was like a monk who saved all living beings. Ning Shu's hands were stained with blood. Regardless of whether it was to protect herself or to protect her belongings, a battle was a must. Moreover, he was such a big shot. Everyone in the organization had to step on him to get to the top. His gentleness was just a facade. One had to see through the facade to see the essence. Without some thunderous means, one couldn't suppress others. Ning Shu said, "Aren't you tired of standing? Sit down. I don't think there will be a winner for a while." Ning Shu's will of death was an advantage, but the other party was strong. If he fought back, Ning Shu wouldn't be able to handle it. The Buddhist man smiled. No need. I'll just stand. Then you can just stand there. He smiled kindly at everyone he saw. As for what he was thinking, no one knew. Ning Shu wasn't in a mood to understand what the other party was thinking. Now, it was just a matter of which of the two consciousnesses would stay. The Buddhist man shook his head and sighed. If your consciousness wins, I don't mind giving you this whip. Ning Shu smiled. This is obviously mine. I don't need you to give it to me. I don't know what they did before. They were probably afraid that I would be in a bad mood, so they were eager to get this thing back. Ning Shu made a sound of surprise. How scary are you to make your subordinates so impatient to snatch it back by hook or by crook? He shook his head. It's not that I'm scary. It's just that they don't want me to be unhappy. It's just a connate treasure. I don't care too much about it. Instead, I'm worried about losing people. People are the most important thing. Ning Shu just snorted. That is to say, if I win, this whip will be mine. The man nodded. If you win, it's yours. Then your subordinates won't come looking for trouble with me anymore. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and asked. No, they won't come looking for you. Ning Shu immediately said, all right then. If they don't come looking for trouble with me, I won't go looking for trouble with them for no reason. It was annoying to be targeted all day. The most important thing was that he could get a connate tycoon, and a fully formed one. Ning Shu felt that this whip was the most suitable weapon for him, so he had to hold on to it. The Buddhist-like man was probably serious now. His consciousness started to counterattack. Previously, it had been motionless, but now, it started to move. His consciousness, which was the size of a grain of rice, exploded with a powerful light. This light seemed to be able to shine through all the filth in the world. One black and one white. It seemed that Ning Shu's consciousness was really filthy. The other party was very pure, just like the holy light illumination. Ning Shu didn't care too much. If his consciousness was really mixed with filthy and evil things, it might be suppressed by this light. However, this consciousness was mixed with death. Death was pure black and wasn't filthy or evil. The black and white fought. Ning Shu didn't have much experience in such a battle of consciousness. He could only eat away at the other party's consciousness bit by bit. The man raised his eyebrows. The law you've comprehended is not simple. It can resist my consciousness. My consciousness is the cleanest. When other people's consciousness comes close, they will feel uncomfortable. Ning Shu only said, thank you for the compliment. Ning Shu and the man were like wooden blocks. They didn't move at all in the void. The two consciousnesses in the whip were clashing fiercely. They didn't give way to each other. Chapter 34-57. The consciousness was connected to the main body, and the pressure and damage could be felt. Ning Shu felt a lot of pressure. The other party's consciousness was very strong, but she could not retreat. If she lost, she would have to hand over the deity-beating whip. In fact, she was betting with the man. Since the other party was magnanimous, she wouldn't go back on her word even if she lost. So, Ning Shu wanted to win openly. If the other party lost and wanted to go back on his words, the man's consciousness seemed to be a righteous person. If he really went back on his words, it might harm his cultivation. Ning Shu was really tired of those people looking for trouble endlessly. It would be difficult for her to completely get rid of them. She had to steadily increase her strength, but these people would come over to harass her and stab her. They could not kill her, but they made her feel irritated. So this was an opportunity for Ning Shu, a chance to obtain the deity-beating whip, and also a chance to stabilize herself. Ning Shu knew that her current strength was still much weaker compared to these factions. And these factions were intertwined, with various forces intertwined. That was to offend a lot of visible and invisible people for no reason. The battle between the two consciousnesses became more and more intense. reaching the climax. Ning Shu quickly familiarized herself with the battle of consciousnesses, and continued to input power. The battle between black and white exploded in the deity-beating whip. Ning Shu felt a little heartache. She did not want to break the deity-beating whip. Ning Shu treasured the deity-beating whip. The consciousness of death was very strong. It was not good to get involved with it. Death was not a good thing after all. But this kind of pure power was incomparable to anything. Even the powerful Sea of Law would die. The man was a little surprised, and nodded. They only said that you are despicable and shameless, but they did not tell me that your strength is not bad. Ning Shu, huh? I am despicable and shameless. I don't even want to talk about what your subordinates did. Please, those people were not any better. The matter with Zhang Jiasen in the restaurant, they were all shady. A crow said that a pig was black, but she did not think so. Everyone was the same. Bah, she was neither a pig nor a crow. The Buddha-like man laughed. He was neither anxious nor annoyed. Even though his consciousness was at a disadvantage now, he was still as calm as before. Ning Shu felt that this person had really faked it into his bones. He wasn't trying to act cool, but it felt like he was. What an invisible act of pretentiousness. He seemed to be a straightforward and upright person. However, Ning Shu wouldn't define it that way. After all, no one knew what these big shots were like. Right now, he was acting all righteous and upright. Who knows, he might be scratching his feet or picking his nose behind his back. Perhaps due to the suppression of the rules, Ning Shu's advantage was becoming more and more obvious. This death was something that Ning Shu had traded his life for. Ning Shu was so afraid of death, so cowardly, that he had directly destroyed himself. It made sense to seek riches and honor in danger. Not convinced? If you're not convinced, go ahead and die. Maybe you'll get something amazing. But if he died, everything would be over. Ning Shu let out a smile. Thank you. This whip is mine. Ning Shu held the whip. Now, this whip only had his consciousness. The consciousness imprint was deeply imprinted on the whip. The Buddha-like man nodded. Now, this whip is yours. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. After losing a weapon, he actually didn't have any reaction. Compared to his subordinates, who were angry out of humiliation and gritting their teeth, they wanted to bite off a piece of meat from him. He seemed to be very gentlemanly. Ning Shu smiled. Even if you want to go back on your words, I won't give it to you. I said that whoever wins will take it. This is yours. After saying that, the Buddha-like man left. Ning Shu touched the whip. He felt as if the whip was a part of his body. It was very intimate and familiar because the whip had his own consciousness. This whip completely belonged to him. Although he had lost a wave of soul power. The soul power that was absorbed by the god-beating whip, the whip wouldn't return to him. It had personality. Ning Shu hummed a little tune. She was a happy girl. Now, the people of that faction had no reason to cause trouble for him. Your boss already said that the whip is already hers. Now, the matter of this whip was finally settled. This was really good news. He had to go eat something to celebrate. Ning Shu went to the restaurant in Water City. Both restaurants were his, so he could eat as he pleased. Walking into the restaurant, Ning Shu bumped into the puppet. To be honest, the charm of the puppet was still very impactful. Putting the puppet in the Law City to take care of the city was probably the best decision. Ning Shu sat down and asked, "What happened in the city?" "No, it's very peaceful," the puppet said honestly. His voice was full of magnetism. When he spoke, it was like the strings of a zither. It was pleasant to the ear and made people feel numb. He really couldn't figure out the meaning of Uncle Chang making such a charming puppet. Wow, Uncle Chang was a pervert. After the two exchanged a few words, there was a suffocating silence. A waiter came over for Ning Shu to order, which eased the awkward atmosphere. The puppet said, Master, are you very embarrassed? Do you need me to tell you a joke? Ning Shu, that was really cold. Ning Shu nodded. Then tell me a joke. Then, the puppet used a handsome but expressionless face to tell a dirty joke. Ning Shu, meow meow meow. Especially when the people at the next table looked at them strangely. Now it was even more awkward. Ning Shu felt that the puppet should be seen as a robot or a computer, but it was too realistic. Ning Shu calmed down and said, Don't tell jokes in the future. Why did you choose such a joke? The puppet said, That's the kind of joke in my database. That was Uncle Chang's fault. He put such a thing in the puppet's database. Ning Shu ate some food and took some profits from the restaurant. It wasn't much, not even as much as what Ning Shu got from dealing with the star stones. But no matter how small a mosquito's meat was, it was still meat. So Ning Shu converted all these merits into merit grains and sent them to the world of reincarnation. Previously, there was already an empty world of reincarnation. It was born, but no soul entered it. Now, there was another world of reincarnation that started to evolve into the pool of reincarnation. He felt that it was a waste to leave this world of reincarnation empty. He wanted to connect the world of reincarnation to the world of living beings. And the world of reincarnation would be quite big. But if he wanted to connect it, he needed skeletons to look after it. Then the skeletons would be scattered in the two worlds. It wasn't good for the skeletons' management. But it was a waste to leave it empty. Even if he didn't use it, after a long time, the pool of reincarnation would slowly disappear. Ning Shu and Zhu Jun discussed the matter of connecting to the world of living beings. The world of reincarnation needed someone to manage it. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.